Hello guys, this is your friend Shinobi Nexus 2.0 and we are back in new fanfic. What if Naruto's secret mentor was murdered and he inherited Hashirama power part 2? Pre-Academy Hinata. Naruto didn't know how to feel as he woke up in the Akamichi compound. He looked around in confusion before seeing Choji as he opened the door, looking just as tired as he was. Today's the big day. What do you think about this whole pre-academy thing? Apparently it's more a new type of training in order to help prepare us for becoming genin. Choji said, Naruto having stopped him from grabbing chips from his bag as he talked. It was normal at this point between the two, as Choji tended to forget what he was talking about while he ate. Naruto let his arm go when he finished. I'm pretty excited honestly, but I can't help but being a bit nervous. Why suddenly create this right before the school year started? Heck, they even did it drastically earlier than usual as a prereq program type deal to go into the school year itself. Naruto inferred, causing a wide-eyed Choji to look at Naruto in what looked like mock fear. Who are you and what have you done to Naruto? Choji seemed to gasp in shock as they both burst out laughing at the joke. Oh har har har. Naruto rolled his eyes as Choza decided now was the time to come out. He figured to let the two boys have their fun before revealing his presence. The two turned towards the large robust man. You know that it starts in the next 15 minutes, I suggest getting ready. Choza smirked a bit as he watched the two become shocked from fear. He threw a uniform towards Naruto. Don't worry Naruto, I didn't forget your situation either, but I wasn't kidding on that. Thankfully we live close enough nearby to make it not late, but I wouldn't risk it on your first day. Choza laughed heartily as the two fearful kids dashed towards the showers, with Choji having beaten Naruto, causing him to have to wait. He decided to grab breakfast first, to which Choza gave the full 9 yards of it. Naruto and Kurama both sweat dropped to the display, and knew where the Akamichi gut came from. Even with Naruto being over so often, it didn't stop the sight from being jaw-dropping. Naruto ate as he waited for Choji to come out, and even though eating only from one bowl of the meal, he still felt his gut grow slightly. A grimace met his face as he and Kurama both knew that he would have to do laps again to get rid of it. Choza rolled his eyes at his so-called nephew's actions, having realized a long while ago what the issue was. You know that there's a technique we have to help you with that. It's not something that you should abuse or else it could backfire on you, but once in a while shouldn't be too bad. Choza offered as Naruto sighed, waving him off a bit. It's fine, it helps motivate me to work out more, I just have to be careful of it. Naruto said calmly as Choza smiled. If you say so. Choza relented as Naruto went to move towards the shower again, seeing as he heard the door open, and immediately went in afterwards. So, the gut swelled a bit from just a small amount of the food. Geez, how are they still alive from all of that food they eat? Kurama said, being both impressed and mortified by the Akamichi clan. From my understanding, I think it's how their bodies are designed, and since their clan techniques are based around those techniques, they have some way to turn the calories to strength or chakra. Other than that, I think they just like the taste of the food. Naruto thought a bit before saying. Kurama just stared at him. What? Naruto said, not appreciating the blank stare that Kurama gave him, one that spoke of pure disbelief and awe. When did you get so, professory? Kurama said, still unbelieving of Naruto's explanation since it made sense, and that didn't fit the headstrong kid he had grown to know. Thankfully, or sadly, Naruto growled a bit and begun yelling at Kurama mentally as to not cause a scene. Sadly, this all took a while, and soon Choza knocked on the bathroom door. You have 5 minutes or you'll be late, he told the two, who rushed through the rest of the shower, rushing through putting their clothes on as they rushed out the door. See ya Uncle Choza, Naruto yelled out as he rushed out the compound, rushing on over to the academy right nearby. He saw Choji ahead pretty far, who looked tempted to stop at a food place. He grabbed his friend by the collar and rushed towards the academy. We're gonna be late, Choji. Naruto seemed absolutely nervous as he had just now rushed on the grounds with his friend, but while he released Choji, he noticed something outside his vision. Choji ran on ahead, looking back in confusion as Naruto waved him onward. Choji nodded, trusting his near brother, before running inside the academy. Hey, this all the Hyuga heir has. Naruto heard kicking from 3 separate sources, and while Kurama tried convincing Naruto otherwise, Naruto kept pushing towards them. Sticking to the trees as told from Honoke, he watched the 3 bullies, one tall and lanky, one short and chubby, and one being what looked to be a 3-year-old beat up a young girl. Naruto grit his teeth. Ha, you in the academy, you're not even worth the bottom of our shoe. The chubby one continued as Naruto had it, finally revealing himself with a punch to the tall one, sending him straight into a tree. He growled as the remaining 2 looked shocked from the act. What are you doing? He yelled in rage as the chubby one tried punching him. Naruto tried blocking it only to get hit in the place the sun doesn't shine by the 3-year-old, leaving him open to a punch himself. He grit his teeth as the 3 looked towards him. Hey, and who's this one? I guess we got a new punching bag. The tall one said, ignoring the blood that fell from his mouth, and the 2 teeth that were now missing, with look like one that was so loose it might as well have been knocked out of his mouth. Naruto used his foot to twist out and proceeded to kick them away into each other, causing the 3-year-old to be nearly crushed by the chubby bully. While they were distracted by that, the girl came and dragged Naruto up and away. Naruto panted a bit, struggling to hold on, but his pain tolerance was still that of a kid, and the nut punch in combination of the gut punch knocked the wind out of him for a bit. He had a feeling Kurama wasn't healing these wounds, but didn't know why. Kurama smirked, knowing more about Naruto's feeling about the girl than Naruto himself. He looked towards the young white-eyed girl. Hey, are you okay? He asked, even as she carried him inside the building. Why yes, I'm okay. The girl stuttered miserably, having a blush cover her face as Naruto looked shocked. Oh okay, you what's your name? Naruto asked, stuttering a bit from the blush. Was she having a fever? Kurama deadpanned at Naruto's thoughts. He couldn't have. Oh Kami, he actually was that dumb. Kami helped him when the girl became older and actually confirmed what Kurama could see growing based on her eyes and Naruto's subconscious thoughts of she looks nice. Hinata. Hinata said, the stutters calming down a bit as she smiled towards Naruto. What's yours? She asked as Naruto grinned despite the pain, and got out of the hold to put his thumb to his chest. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. My dream is to become the Hokage and have everyone become friends with everyone. He grinned towards Hinata, whose blush came back and deepened in intensity. Are you sure you don't have a fever? Naruto asked in deep concern as Kurama growled at him. Idiot. Kurama said simply, not providing an explanation as Naruto looked in confusion. Hinata didn't help things any as she passed out from Naruto grabbing her hands out of concern. Naruto grabbed her and put her on his back piggyback style, mostly due to Kurama yelling that if he didn't, that he would force him to eat 5 bowls of Chose's cooking and work it off in an hour. To the classroom. The 2 Chunin stared at him as he walked to the classroom door, at least, he thought it was. He didn't get to ask Choji which class they were in and they forgot to tell him the previous night. Naruto stared back at them. Hey, is this the way to the genin class? Naruto asked as they nodded. Great, sorry for being late. Naruto grinned as he moved to go in, the 2 blocking him. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm a part of the pre-academy genin class, so move out of my way. Naruto glared at the 2, who rolled their eyes, and proceeded to turn the kid to the door directly across. Oh, he finally said, embarrassed as he apologized to the guards, who paid it no mind. He opened the door only to find a supply closet, and the door behind him suddenly closed. Hey, let me out, Dadbayo. He yelled as he banged against the door, figuring that the two guards had moved to block his exit. He heard the light groaning as he turned back to see Hinata slowly waking up. Good going there, Naruto. Now what are you going to do? Kurama snapped a bit, drawling out his liquid sarcasm at the kid, who was mentally berating himself along with the demon fox. He turned his attention to Hinata instead. Hinata, are you alright? Some teams remember. Naruto used tem for Sasuke, which literally just means Sasuke bastard. Since the character himself uses it, I can, as long as it fits the character, locked us in here. Naruto explained as Hinata's blush hit full force. Trapped in a room, alone with Naruto-kun. Hinata thought as the blush became too strong again and she passed out again. Hinata. Naruto yelled in a mixture of confusion, frustration, and terror. Kurama just burst out laughing. What's so funny? Naruto demanded of his partner, not caring that anyone heard him. Kurama looked to remove a tear as he slowly ended the laughter. Okami Naruto, you are a riot with how dumb you are. Kurama chuckled a bit as Naruto growled, what do you mean by that? ? Naruto countered as Kurama shrugged. Let's just say Hinata has a crush on someone and let you figure out the rest. Kurama said as Naruto basically had question marks spawn all around him with how confused he was. Frustrated at not finding the answer to Kurama's riddle, he thinks it's a riddle. Kurama couldn't help as the laughter went back in full force again, annoying Naruto as he ignored his fox demon friend. He turned his attention towards the door. He banged it again and again, hoping to use strength to overcome it as he prepared for a shove, only for the door to suddenly open, causing him to fall down in front of Iruka and most of the class, who immediately saw Hinata passed out and Naruto on the ground having fell from a would-be shove. Snickers started spreading throughout the students, but Iruka was livid. Naruto, what did you do? Iruka seemed to leak killing intent, not enough to faze Kurama any. It's like a little kitty acting like a lion. It's kinda adorable if downright stupid. Kurama shrugged, but made most of the class flinch and walk away, with the sole exception being Sasuke, who instead became intrigued by the killing intent before seeing Naruto. Sasuke deadpanned as he watched Naruto look towards Iruka and talk about how Hinata fainted and the like, as well as having been locked in the room trying to get to class. Who is this Dobi even trying to fool? Dobi. Suits the idiot for doing this. Not one day in and he's already trying to get to first base. Sasuke teased at that invading thought as he tried not to turn around. I'm not jealous, he denied, ignoring the feeling that someone was smirking at him. Kurama wouldn't tell Naruto why he was smirking viciously at Sasuke as he desperately tried to convince Iruka on what happened. It didn't help matters that when he turned around, there was about 12 of the 30-ish people in the class who instantly tried, badly, to pretend they weren't just admiring Sasuke just now. He sighed, slightly annoyed as he noticed someone in the group that he wished was different from the rest. Seems he was wrong that night. While Sasuke was going through his internal crisis, Naruto had sighed to Iruka, who merely smirked. You are a bundle of trouble, huh, Naruto? Iruka said with a grin, the class annoyed as Naruto got off. But I don't want you too late again, and that goes to you too, Choji. Iruka yelled towards the now flinching Choji, who nodded with a deep bow. Good job saving her, Naruto. Iruka whispered to him, who grinned. No problem, Iruka-sensei, Naruto said as the two nodded. So, what happened with class? Naruto suddenly asked afterwards, causing Iruka to sheepishly chuckle. We kinda just released for lunch, and noticed the loud banging of that door. It looked like it was reinforced forcibly with chakra, but you were doing some heavy damage to it either way. ... Iruka said, having noticed the door nearly crashed to the ground had it not been for the weirdly activated seals around it. It was why Iruka had believed Naruto, since the door never locked without those seals being active, and Naruto wasn't the type of kid to know seals, or use them like that. He had to talk to the Hokage about that later, but right now, his gaze fell towards Hinata, who Naruto picked up, piggyback style once again, ready to take her wherever Iruka needed her to go to help her. He instead put his hand over her face with a smirk. "She's fine, Naruto, just passed out," Iruka said with a smirk. "Naruto, oh Kami, please say he isn't," Iruka said, smirk falling into a shocked sweat-faced smile, as Naruto looked at him in confusion. "She keeps fainting though, with these heavy blushes on her face. Does she have a fever?" Naruto asked, completely clueless, much to the class's dismay. "Naruto, you idiot," the entire class, along with Iruka and Kurama, thought as one. How did he not notice that he was the one causing her to faint? If his story checked out, he saved her from a group of bullies, had suffered injuries only to ignore them to ask about her health, carried her on his back towards the class, then got tricked into a small supply closet. Alone, locked up, just them. Iruka had only one thought on his mind as he sweat dropped, much to Naruto's confusion. Hiashi is going to kill him. Hiashi, along with most of the clan heads, were not afraid or wary of Naruto, they treated him like other kids his age. Yet if Hiashi heard about what happened to the two, with them getting locked in a supply closet, together, and alone, for well over 4 hours. Oh boy, Naruto was going to die from that. Hiashi was just like Ino's father in that sense, with both being very protective of their children, much more in the case of Ino's father, while Hiashi led his children mostly free and watched over them, but Iruka was afraid, terrified even at this. Kurama was also confused at this point, noticing fear suddenly spike in the chakra flow of Iruka. Why, and more importantly, what was Iruka so afraid of? "It's fine, Naruto, if you ever get a call from Hiashi, avoid him as long as you can if possible unless I'm there," Iruka tried to tell Naruto, who had ignored every word after his own name. Instead, Naruto was trying to wake Hinata up, and failing. "Hinata." Naruto tried calling out once more before sighing, proceeding to lightly flick her head. The students, especially Iruka himself, paled as Hinata woke up, blush on her face again. "Sorry about that, I was trying to wake you up. We got out of the room thanks to Iruka-sensei. I'll help you with catching up with the content since it was my fault we got locked up in there." Naruto apologized, determined to make it up to Hinata. No. Nah, Naruto, why you don't have to do that for me. Hinata stuttered, blush firmly in place, as she tried to change Naruto's mind. Naruto simply shook his head. "I'm going to be the future Hokage. That means owning up to my actions and taking responsibility. I had us miss class because of my own actions, so to make it up to you I'll assist you in what we missed," Naruto declared, very loudly, to Hinata. It seemed like the rest of the people in the hall didn't even exist to him at the moment. Hinata blushed heavily, desperately trying to not pass out again, to which she finally succeeded. She instead simply hugged Naruto in thanks. Naruto smiled and hugged her back. "Luckyyyyyyyyyyyyy" was the simple thought that consumed most of the class, all angry at how easily Naruto had gotten the Hyuga heiress in his grasp. And he didn't even realize it. Naruto only looked in confusion as Iruka groaned. "Well, since you missed the beginning of class, you'll be eating lunch while we go through the lesson. Come on, you two. Everyone else, enjoy your lunch," Iruka said as the classmates started walking away with differing looks of confusion, envy, intrigue and pity towards the group of now 3. Iruka led them to the actual classroom, which just so happened to be the door that those 2 guards were blocking, much to Naruto's annoyance. Hinata and Naruto decided to sit next to each other in the first row, seeing as no one else was there at the moment. The room seemed simple, with 3 rows of seats separated by a walkway down the middle, with the teacher's podium and chalkboard on the other side of the room. The windows showed the kids outside enjoying their meal and playing with each other while Naruto and Hinata sat down next to each other. Hinata, while blushing, decided to open her eyes. The blush immediately turned into confusion as she noticed the dual nature of Naruto. Naruto, why do you have two chakra sources? Hinata asked. Noting that his eyes turned crimson with a blue backdrop, he seemed to grin a bit when he looked back towards her. That would be because I'm sealed in him. Sorry about his ignorance, Kit. Kurama said, forcing Naruto to stay back for a while, isolating him in the sealed room for a while. Naruto pouted a bit, but didn't mind much. Naruto. Hinata seemed shocked as Kurama shook his head. Iruka groaned again. Kurama, why are you revealing yourself to her? He asked, exasperated by the demon fox. Kurama grinned in response. So his name was Kurama. Wasn't his name Naruto? Confusion was evident on her face as Kurama continued on. I mean, she likes Naruto, Kurama said simply, happy that Naruto didn't hear this as Hinata's blush went full blast at the truth, so eventually she would have to find out about me. That and she's trustworthy. She might be a weak kid right now, but with time and useful training, she'll be pretty strong. I approve. Kurama winked as Hinata passed out, having a bit of a nosebleed. Kurama snickered at this. That and it's hilarious to tease her. Come on, I have to deal with this idiot being completely ignorant to her crush and deal with it, I get to tease. Kurama said, to which Iruka relented, for he somewhat agreed with it. How the he? Iruka started with exasperation written on his face, only to see Kurama sigh. I wish I knew so I could beat it out of him. Kurama said simply, but there was a hint of a groan in his tone, as the crimson faded back to being the backdrop to that sky blue eyes Naruto was known for. What? Naruto asked, looking around in confusion. Hinata, he yelled as he noticed his friend passed out. Kurama, what did you do? He yelled towards his friend, who only snickered as Naruto flicked her forehead again to wake her up. Kurama didn't have the heart to tell him that he was infusing his chakra in the flick to wake her up and didn't need the flick. Kurama needed entertainment and was not afraid of teasing him. He no longer wanted to kill the brat, but tease him mercilessly. Fair game. Thankfully, while Kurama knew how to read Naruto's thoughts, Naruto didn't know how to read his, much to his pleasure. A small part of him was disappointed, while the other was thankful that it meant Naruto didn't have to see all the gruesome things that Kurama had done, or the violet-colored gate that locked some of his memories away. He didn't know how to feel about either part, and once again grew silent, much to the annoyance of Naruto. Naruto. Hinata groggily got up, her standard stutter not even showing up from the lack of realization as Naruto grinned. From on top of her. Right next to her face. Iruka and Kurama groaned verbally as Hinata passed out once more, blush once again reestablished. Maybe it would be better if you gave her some space, Naruto. Iruka suggested, to which Kurama begrudgingly, stupid human spoiling his fun. Agreed with. Naruto moved to the next row up, hoping that it would be better than directly next to her, which it was after she got back up via a chakra-infused flick. Iruka had to agree with Kurama. He didn't have the heart to tell him about the fact that all he needed was to just tap her with his finger to have the same effect. Once more, for what was soon starting to get annoying rather than endearing, Hinata woke up. She looked around before Iruka stopped her. Hinata, are you okay? Passing out that many times in a row cannot be good for the brain, so I have to ask. Iruka said, as Naruto panicked and nearly spoke up if not for Kurama growling at him to wait. Hinata shyly blushed and looked down, twiddling her fingers from embarrassment. As long as you're okay, I don't mind. Let's begin, you two. Iruka said with a smile before starting with the introduction to chakra, explaining stuff that Naruto somewhat innately knew. While Naruto was bored and struggling to stay up, Kurama was snoring and Hinata was paying close attention to the basic explanation. Hey Kurama, you there? Naruto's eyes were drooping as he asked, Kurama seemed to ask, but most likely it was a sleepy nod towards Naruto. Naruto sighed, I assume you're bored too. Naruto deadpanned, but couldn't really blame the fox seeing as he could barely stay awake. Yeah, honestly this is all stuff that I already know, and I believe you do as well, but I would still pay attention, just in case he says something you don't know. Kurama shrugged, yawning a bit as he explained to Naruto, who seemed unconvinced. Why should I do that? Naruto asked, more like whined, to Kurama, who rolled his eyes tiredly. Say he's teaching chakra control, he could explain the tree walking exercise you already know, and mention a tip that makes it easier to work with your chakra, stuff like that. Heck, he might mention something or somewhere you can go to research yourself. I want you to become strong, any less is an insult with your training and by extension, an insult to me. Kurama really couldn't care for tact at the moment with his explanation as he yawned again before facing Naruto. Naruto seemed to think a bit before disappearing from the room in his mind. Kurama rolled his eyes, hoping his tactless explanation reached his kit's head. Kurama shrugged once more before going to sleep, not really caring if he was right or wrong. Kurama sadly wasn't right, unless Iruka had said something important during the time Naruto was talking to him, since all Iruka did was go for a basic understanding of something Naruto already knew, much to his disappointment. Naruto sighed a bit as he walked towards Iruka. Yes, Naruto? Iruka asked as Naruto thought a bit, much to Iruka's shock, before responding. Well, my chakra control, to quote Kurama, is terrible. I know how to do the tree walking and leaf concentration exercises, but with the tree walking exercise, I can't complete it unless I was competing with Sasuke Tem. Iruka glared a bit at that, before bopping Naruto and telling him no cursing. Part of him wondered where he even heard the term. Either way, I only know a bit of what he was telling me. I have a lot of chakra, but because of the whole sealed fiasco, it takes a lot more to convert it to chakra instead of physical representation. Naruto said, looking back to his paper as Iruka mentally sighed in relief, knowing that Naruto had written this out with the help of Kurama and didn't just suddenly become a genius on him. Do you have any way for me to improve that? Naruto asked as Iruka smiled. Well, you could always head to the academy library. There's a good amount of scrolls that could help you along that path. And I'm sure Kurama can help you pick out scrolls that would be helpful to you. Iruka asked, feeling that Kurama had snorted at him, which was confirmed when Naruto rolled his eyes at his partner. Wait for tomorrow, I was going to take the whole class down there in order to help them set up some basic jutsu techniques between them. From what I hear, you're good at the henge, much more than most kids your age. Iruka said, seeing as Naruto grinned under the praise. Iruka proceeded to give a stern look in response before continuing, however, you don't have any other jutsu techniques on you. Naruto deflated back down and nodded. They told me that the academy would teach the jutsu, I just had to practice the chakra control. Physically, I'm well off. Iruka shot an eyebrow towards the gut, noting the glare Naruto gave him. I live with the Akamichis. Just one bowl does this. Naruto said, still keeping the glare on Iruka, who apologized with a sheepish laugh. The glare went away as Naruto groaned, then all of this stuff happened, and I just... I want to get stronger. To protect them. As the future Hokage, I want everyone to be friends with everyone, and I know that in order to do that, you have to be strong. And, I was too weak to protect him. Naruto said, not noticing the tears that were starting to take hold until his voice broke off. Iruka sighed, grief bleeding through that loving gaze he gave Naruto as he knelt down to the aforementioned boy. I know Naruto, but you're not weak. Iruka said as Naruto glared at him in disbelief. You aren't. The glare seemed to increase in intensity as he continued on, your heart Naruto, your heart. Uruka sighed from the confusion and decided to take a more direct approach with him. If you were weak, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be asking me how to improve. Probably, you would have been asleep and not paying the least bit of attention, and I know it, but you're here. And because of that, I think that you're strong. Weak people give up, walk away, and wallow in self-pity and defeat. You are strong, and I know it, Naruto. Just because you couldn't protect those you love now, doesn't mean you can't gain the strength to in the future to protect those you meet later on. It doesn't make you weak, it just means you're young. You're 7 years old, and it's up to us to protect you right now, to raise you so that when you grow up, you can carry the torch and help the future generations along. Now do you understand? Uruka said, noting that the tears were drying up, only to be replaced by a wobbly grin. Thanks Uruka-sensei, Naruto said, much to Uruka's joy. Now, when does lunch end? Naruto asked as Uruka rolled his eyes from exasperation. Oh, I almost forgot, there is no lunch period. Everyone is let out at lunchtime. Uruka grinned mischievously at the yelling Naruto gave him, but noticed the shy shocked smile of Hinata. Seems she was also listening in, and Uruka firmly denied that he didn't forget about her, no matter what anyone said. How about you walk Hinata home? Uruka suggested, smirking at the blush that met Hinata's face. I couldn't ask Naruto for that. Hinata stuttered out as Naruto, though confused, nodded with a grin. Okay Uruka-sensei, I gotta make sure those bullies don't try attacking her again. Come on Hinata, let's go. Naruto said, seemingly unfazed by the blush from Hinata. She was so embarrassed that she fell down the steps in the middle, leading Naruto to catch her with a smile. You okay Hinata? He asked as he lifted Hinata up, only to see, much to Kurama and Uruka's exasperation, that she was passed out. Naruto was starting to get used to this by now and only made to put her on his back, smiling towards Uruka. You know where she lives? Uruka caught him before he left, noting the flinch and awkward silence. Naruto sheepishly laughed as Uruka rolled his eyes and shook his head. Come on, I'll lead you towards her home, he said, figuring if Hiashi was going to kill him, to have him do it earlier rather than later. That and he wanted to watch, he noted with a smirk. Hinata yawned, blinking her eyes as blonde hair came into view, as well as a grin. Hey Hinata, you're finally awake. A blush made it to her face as she dug into the blonde hair, heart racing from the touch. Uruka had told me to wait on him, he's taking so long. Naruto whined, bored from waiting as he looked like he was getting yelled at. Kurama, he dragged out the name as if it bore the weight of his boredom itself. Hinata giggled a bit at it as Naruto pouted a bit from it. Groaning her name as he had done with Kurama's, he sighed before changing the topic. So Hinata, why were you so afraid of heading home? Naruto asked lightly. Hinata flinched back a bit. Well I didn't want to see you get hurt Naruto. Hinata stuttered as she explained, tapping two of her fingers against each other and diverting from Naruto's eyesight. My father can be overprotective of me, to the point that I don't have any friends in the village. She continued with a sense of sadness in her tone. Naruto flicked her on the forehead with a grin. You got me. And no matter who your father is, he can't change that. Naruto put a thumb to his chest proudly, believe it. He shouted loudly. Hinata burst out into giggles once more with a smile on her face from Naruto's confidence. Hinata looked behind and saw Uruka walking up behind him silently, putting a finger on his mouth when he noticed Hinata looking at him as he sneaked up on Naruto. He got 2 pieces of chalk erasers out and loudly clapped them next to Naruto's ear. What? Naruto screamed indignantly in surprise as he started looking around for the noise, only to hear it again from his other ear. Hinata was struggling to be respectful and not laugh too loudly at the blonde boy in front of her. It wasn't going too well as Naruto started doing hand signs that seemed to terrify Uruka. Giggling, Hinata walked up to the both of them with a smile on her face. Let's get going. Father doesn't like waiting that long. Hinata said shyly, twiddling her fingers as the two agreed, though Naruto still looked at Iruka with a mischievous grin that promised a future prank on his sensei. Iruka's eye twitched in response, and followed slightly behind her as Hinata opened the door to the Hyuga compound. The surrounding area was dim in terms of light, with a sole garden near the middle of the compound that was surrounded by multiple houses. A large tree grew from the middle and a large 3-story house towered over the 2- and 1-story houses that lived nearby. Hinata walked towards that house, passing the tree with a humble bow. Iruka also gave a bow and Naruto shrugged and tried to walk on past the tree, only for Kurama to turn him around and have him bow so he didn't get yelled at while he slept. Naruto rolled his eyes out of ignorance, but Kurama was too tired to explain to him. Hinata walked and opened the door to the compound, only to find an slightly older-looking boy glaring at her. Oh, so that's where you were. Who knew it would take you 100 years to get home, Hinata? What? Get lost on the way home out of shame? The boy asked sarcastically, Hinata looking painfully shy under the older boy's glare. Well, Hinata stuttered as the boy ignored her in favor of the two behind her. She gulped at the notice that she wasn't even worth the time of day to him. And who are these two? The boy instead asked, not at all remorseful for his actions. Naruto gritted his teeth as Kurama opened an eye. Sighing, Kurama resigned himself for a lack of sleep as he watched Naruto's anger rose in waves against the calm rage that the boy portrayed. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. I'm gonna become the next Hokage, believe it. Naruto stuck his thumb to his chest, but his normal grin was instead replaced with a look of determined anger. The boy didn't really look impressed, and only scoffed. My name is Iruka Yumino, thank you to the one that told me this. I honestly hadn't known, and I am Hinata's pre-academy sensei. I came alongside Naruto here, because I wanted to talk to your father and clear something up before the public rumors muddied up all the facts of the matter. Please excuse us. Iruka cut in before the boy and Naruto could continue on with their spat, while Hinata silently thanked him with a sigh of relief. The boy rolled his eyes. Fine, but only because my loving sister is inviting you. I got a mission to go on, get out of my way. The boy glared at Hinata before walking through Naruto, shoving him out of the way. Hey, what was that for? Naruto yelled back in anger, only to get ignored once more. Naruto, gritting his teeth, readied for running after him and giving him a piece of his mind. Hinata grabbed his hand in a look of begging, shaking her head to ask him not to do it. Reluctantly, as well as still mentally cursing the boy, he finally turned back with a HMPH as Iruka sighed in relief, mentally adding that boy to the list of stuff to talk to Hiyashi-san about. Be sure to buy the red tomatoes, Neji. An older-looking Hyuga, this one without the Byakuran and looking somewhat poor, called towards Neji, who visibly flinched and ignored her. She sighed before bowing to Hinata, looking as if she was terrified of her presence near Hinata. Are you alright? Naruto asked out of understanding, having seen that face in the mirror when he was younger and struggling to get by. He shook the bad memories back as the lady smiled with a nod before walking away. Naruto looked a bit worried, and decided to head back later with some food he could find to give them. The group walked inside the rather bland-looking house, doing their best to drive the memory of meeting the boy, or Neji as the lady had called him, out of their mind for the moment. Tatami mats laid here and there, but very little else was visible. They took their shoes off as the group walked to the main door. A older-looking man laid in seiza in front of them, but began with giving Hinata a firm stare. Kurama couldn't find any malice within the stare until it gazed and landed upon Naruto and Iruka. Kurama smirked mentally at this, much to the confusion of Naruto. So you're finally back, Hinata. What caused you to be so late? He asked with nary a tone, as if his emotions did not exist to begin with. Hinata gulped a bit, but before she could start stuttering, Iruka smiled and walked in front. That's actually what I wish to talk to you, Hiyashi-san, if that's alright with you. Iruka calmly asked, head bowing a bit low out of respect, as Hiyashi turned his head towards Naruto. He raised an eyebrow in an obvious question, but it was quickly gone as soon as it appeared. Naruto is here because he was part of the whole reason why we're here, and I figured you would want a first-hand explanation over what happened since he was the one that had saved your daughter. Iruka said, mentally smirking as he laid the hook. He knew that if he wanted to get this situated without Naruto getting blacklisted by the Hyuga clan, he had to act fast and intelligently. Hiyashi looked back towards Iruka, still keeping that passive face on his face. Okay, I'll allow him to stay for the time being, but only until he explains his part of the story. Hiyashi said calmly, much to the bitter annoyance of Naruto. Kurama didn't really disagree with his emotions, knowing about the passive facade the Hyuga clan were known for. Thank you, Hiyashi-san, I'll make this quick as to not waste your precious time. Earlier today, Naruto here had saved Hinata from a group of 3 bullies that were beating her up. Afterwards, when trying to enter the class, he was tricked into getting locked in a supply closet with Hinata. Sadly, Hinata was passed out from all of that due to her. Iruka paused here, motioning towards Hinata to pick up. Anyo. I was passed out because they were all kicking my stomach. I was able to hold on until Naruto showed up, but he provided me with time to rest my wounds and focus on my chakra. Hinata lied with a blush on her face, not at all wanting to tell the truth so close to Naruto. Even though Iruka sat in the middle between the two, she could still see Naruto giving her a reassuring grin her way. Then I must thank you, Naruto-san, thank you for keeping her safe, but how did you get yourself locked in a small supply closet with my daughter? Hiyashi asked, his tone becoming colder with each word he said. It was a minute change of tone, but enough to where Kurama kept Naruto from speaking immediately. Kurama, what is it? He said thank you and everything. Naruto whined mentally, somehow keeping a blank look on his face in the process. I don't think he is as thankful as he sounds. Choose your words carefully or you might not live to regret it. Kurama told him, much to Naruto's nervousness. Gulping back a breath he didn't know he held, Naruto, with Kurama's help, began speaking aloud to Hiyashi. Thank you for your kindness, Hiyashi-san. As Iruka-sensei has already told you, I was tricked into the closet. There were 2 Chunin. I don't know, but they had those vests like Iruka-sensei does, blocking the doorway. I asked them where the class was since it was the first day and we were late, so I really didn't know where to go. They pointed me to the closet, so I went there, but then they locked me in. I was carrying Hinata who was recovering, and I tried breaking the door down. Sadly, I couldn't get us out before Iruka-sensei came and found us with the rest of the class, so we stayed for lunch in order to catch up only to find that it was after class ended. Can you believe that? So that's why Hinata was late. Don't blame her or anything, since it wasn't her fault. If you want someone to blame, blame those idiots that locked us in the closet. Naruto said as Kurama's hold on his speech grew less and less with each word he rambled. Remarkably, Hiyashi nodded along and seemed as if he was listening intently on the story that Naruto provided. Naruto grinned at the end, happy to see someone paying attention and not ignoring him out of content, and Hiyashi smiled lightly back at the young lad sitting in a sloppy seiza in front of him. He turned to Hinata, smile still on his face. Iruka had a stern look towards Naruto as he noticed him almost cursing during the explanation, but said nothing. Is what he speaks true, Hinata? Hiyashi asked lightly, but the smile twitched when Hinata flinched back out of fear. Naruto wanted to reach towards her, but Iruka sat between them and shook his head, much to Naruto's chagrin at the motion. Hinata looked towards Naruto and her eyes of fear steeled into ones of protectiveness. She looked back at Hiyashi. Yes, father. He came to rescue me from the bullies before I had passed out from my wounds. I am sorry for failing you in that manner. Hinata bowed her head deeply into her own lap, failing to see the look of pride flash across Hiyashi's face at his daughter before it faded into his standard poker face. You did not fail me, Hinata. We shall train you more, and I hope you use this experience as an inspiration to get stronger to protect what you call dear. Naruto-san, allow me to express my gratitude to you, and an apology for thinking you made yourself out as a fool. Hiyashi said respectfully, much to Naruto's glee. Iruka looked at him, as well as Kurama, before Naruto grinned and stood up suddenly. Don't worry about it, Pokerface-san. I'll continue to help out Hinata-chan as she is my best friend and I never abandon my friends. Naruto said seriously, thumb over his chest once again. Kurama burst out laughing at the twitch that came upon Hiyashi's face at his new nickname. Pokerface-san. Iruka looked close to fainting as he stuttered out the name. Naruto's grin grew. Hinata was just plain passed out, from a mix of laughter and embarrassment of her friend. Hiyashi, however, chuckled along. Iruka passed out at that point as Hiyashi stood up. Then I'll trust you, Naruto-san, but no one works alone. Follow me if you will. I'll have my guards take Iruka-san and Hinata-chan to their rooms, so don't worry about them. Hiyashi explained, noticing Naruto's worried glance to his friends. A smile made its way upon his face as he led Naruto out of the room. Kurama watched as Naruto was led by Hiyashi towards a rectangular-like room, most likely a training room if the taijutsu class was anything to go by. The tall one, the teacher, if Kurama's guess held true, bowed as soon as he saw Hiyashi, but that shocked expression turned into badly concealed rage when his eyes shifted to Naruto. Hiyashi most likely held a firm gaze based on the fact that the teacher scoffed bitterly before looking away, desperately trying to pretend that Naruto and his very existence didn't exist. Naruto had a pang of hurt rush through his mind before putting on his gleeful-looking mask of happiness he calls a grin. So Pokerface-san, why are we here? Naruto asked out of curiosity, enjoying the expression of pure shock rushing over the teacher. Hiyashi noticed the glint in Naruto's eyes and held one of his own, surprising Naruto and Kurama. He has a glint too. He knows. Naruto thought happily, pointedly ignoring Kurama's own groans of, oh dear Kami, there's two of them, in favor of watching the teacher stutter unintelligibly. Well, we're here to train you. I had heard you were trained by Honoke and I was curious on what he taught you. Hiyashi admitted, only to have his eye twitch a bit from the overpowering glint of glee that leapt like stars from Naruto's eyes. You knew Honoke-sensei. Naruto practically leapt for joy from it as Hiyashi, after a moment of trying to get over his shock, nodded. The rest of the clan members in the training hall seemed to just stop and stare at the pair like they were aliens or something, much to Kurama's amusement. Why yes, we were partners for many missions together as I taught him when he was preparing for his Chunin exams. He's somewhat of a legend here actually for his actions during the 9. Hiyashi stopped talking from the crimson glare that flashed towards him. Coughing, he changed the topic. I'm so sorry about what happened to him. I promise you that I will do all I can to catch his murderer, just like how you will do everything to protect my daughter, correct? Hiyashi asked as the crimson faded back into that sky blue he knew. Naruto grinned with a firm nod. You can count on me, Pokerface-san. Naruto had his thumb to his chest in his signature pose. The other students and teachers openly gaped at the sight as Naruto laughed at the sight. Since he had his eyes close, he missed the smile that Hiyashi gave him. Of course, let's begin. Hiyashi said before rushing at Naruto. Naruto didn't even know what had happened, but the pattern repeated again and again as Kurama led him to safety. After a while, Kurama scoffed and told him to follow his instincts before he started relying too much on Kurama to help out. Naruto gritted his teeth out of frustration, but couldn't deny the fact that Kurama wasn't wrong at that. Apparently what Hiashi meant by let's begin was let's begin beating you up to the ground. Left. Hiashi said simply as Naruto had started to jump to the left. Back and right, he said again as he kept telling Naruto's movements. Hiashi began attacking once more as Naruto got blown back, still conscious this time. You managed to not pass out, congrats. Usually takes someone about 27 times to do that, you only took 15. Though they actually landed hits on me before passing out, so don't hold your head up too high from that. Well, Iruka's waiting on you, so come back tomorrow and I'll explain how you can improve your reaction times and start teaching you counterattacks. Hiashi said simply with a smirk as Naruto barely even registered the words before passing out once again. Iruka scoffed as he walked over. Guess you were still mad, Honoke-san. Iruka glared without any real weight behind it, more bemused than wrathful. Hiashi shrugged at the accusation. Who knows? Maybe this will teach him not to get himself locked in supply closets with my daughter, or cause her to pass out blushing. I had to test that who my daughter has a crush on. Speaking of my daughter, where is Hinata? Hiashi said, a light smirk still visible on his face. Iruka scoffed once more as he picked Naruto onto his back. She's waiting for us out front. Told her to wait on Naruto and me since I figured something like this was going to happen. Iruka explained before smirking himself, didn't want to carry two. Iruka said simply, much to the chuckled laughter from Hiashi. I see, still will never understand why you never try to learn the shadow clone jutsu technique to help with that. Hiashi pointed towards Naruto, imagine if he learned it before you. It would make you look like you're lagging behind your kohais. Hiashi laughed as Iruka rolled his eyes. You're one to talk, you don't even learn your clan's main technique. Oh wait, your clan is cut in half, I forgot. Iruka winked before the two broke out into laughter. Tomorrow at 7, Hiashi said tensely with a hand on Iruka's shoulder. Both you and him get training for that one. Hiashi continued before Iruka nodded with a nervous laugh before walking away. The day was almost done at that point with the sun turning orange in that high-up sky as Naruto finally woke up groggily. Even Kurama was tired after having to heal all his wounds and neither could stop the indignant scream that came out when Kakashi suddenly popped up in front of Naruto's tired eyes. Yo! Kakashi said simply with his only visible eye closed. Naruto's eyes twitched in response, which Kakashi promptly ignored. It's time to get started on our information hunting, as well as your advanced stealth training. Kakashi said with a tone suggesting happiness. Naruto tried to say as Kakashi put his hand on Naruto's shoulder. Great. Let's get started. Kakashi hastily stopped Naruto's dismissal before the two seemed to vanish to the eye. In reality, Kakashi carried Naruto while shunshining, and soon they were in a tree near the academy, which happened to be the same one Iruka and Honoke were in on Naruto's birthday party. Kakashi was glad his mask hid his smirk as he watched the boy puke onto the building from it. He knew from the purple eyes that glared at him that they weren't happy about it, but he couldn't resist messing with the young kid in front of him. After the puking and glaring faded, Naruto's eyes turned into starry blue ones. Kakashi-sensei, what was that? He squawked at Kakashi, who cleaned his ears with a finger in response. You are nowhere near the skill needed to know, now never mind that, look over there and tell me what you see. Kakashi said, pointing towards the academy. Naruto was about to ask him what he meant when he spotted a man that looked really nervous, constantly looking around and back to the academy building. He carried a box that was about 5 inches cubed, but they couldn't tell what was inside of it at the moment with how protective he looked about it. Who is that guy? Naruto asked Kakashi, who simply closed his eye again. That's what I want you to find out. You got your target, go find out about him via any means necessary. Kakashi said simply, subtly making a sign behind his back towards the two Anbu watching over him to keep him safe, to which Naruto groaned. Great. So you're pushing me away from the case. Naruto pouted, but still kept watch over the man. No, I really do believe that man has something to do with whatever is happening here, but I'm going after more dangerous prey. Prey that could kill a little kid like yourself, even with Kurama's help. I don't think Kurama can heal you if your limbs get ripped apart and your head chopped off, so I want to keep you safe. Just watch over the man, see what he does, and I'll be able to gather the evidence from your mind later on with a new jutsu I'll teach you after this. Kakashi said, much to the awe of Naruto, who was hooked with the words, new jutsu. Kurama and Kakashi shared a smirk at Naruto's attitude as Kakashi pointed back to the man, who was walking away. Hey look, he's getting away. Kakashi said tonelessly, causing Naruto to turn. In that moment, Kakashi shunshined away towards the roof of the academy outside of Naruto's eyesight, and while he saw Naruto balk and run after the man from the rooftops, Kakashi looked towards the roof. Two shadows dropped down a few meters away from him. Let's get started, Kakashi said simply as the two nodded, before they slipped into the academy in search for clues. Naruto and Kurama struggled to keep silent as they watched him, with Kurama having to help out with keeping him focused on his surroundings, while Naruto watched the man and kept him in his sights. The man bobbed and weaved around the silent streets of Konoha, looking as if someone was after him, ironic given Naruto's given job, but he wasn't laughing. The man eventually slipped into a darkened side street that even Naruto couldn't tell where it went. After a second of hesitation, he kept watch over on the rooftop above, as the man stopped, looking left and right as he left the box that he had been carrying the whole way before running away, his job seemingly done. Naruto frowned as he let him go, more interested in what would happen to the box. Good idea. The man was probably a lackey. I'll keep watch around us to make sure we don't get caught from behind. Be careful, Naruto. Kurama told him at his thought process, to which he got a light nod from Naruto and not a word back. Another man, this one calmer and collected, arrived robed in a uniform that Naruto didn't know of, as well as a mask that reminded him of the men that would chase him down when he was out on one of his many pranks. However, the masks those men wore proudly depicted the animal they represented, color and all. This mask was super vague with its markings, to the point where Naruto couldn't even tell what animal, if any, it was supposed to depict. The masked man, who could have been a boy depending on what it was, but Naruto couldn't tell from his perch, grabbed the box and seemed to jump away, with Naruto immediately giving chase after him. Unlike the man from earlier, this masked assailant quickly caught on to the boy and did everything he could to lose him. If it wasn't for Kurama's notice, Naruto would have lost him on the first corner he took, but the chase continued on for longer than the two would admit. Many long minutes later, the two were finally at where the man wanted to be, as evidenced by the fact that Naruto did all that he could to give him space. After the masked person thought he was gone, he arrived nearby the academy, jumping in a passageway that Naruto never even knew existed. Giving about 10 seconds between the two, Naruto gulped and opened the passageway below towards what he had thought were the sewers. He climbed down and struggled to look around, seeing a faint light in the distance. He carefully sneaked towards it, seeing a group of masked men and a much older man with bandages wrapping up his body. He struggled to listen in, but could only make a few words out. Something about Konoha, and, we begin tonight. Confused and having found all he could, Naruto exited the passageway the way he came, but Kurama grimaced, unsure if anyone had noticed the two there. Naruto panted as he walked towards the Akamichi compound, exhausted from the long amount of close jumps and runs he had when stalking the man and masked person. Chozo was waiting for him at the compound entrance as he picked up the young boy to bring him to bed. Sorry, Naruto mumbled sleepily, trying to apologize for not being able to hear more of the conversation. For what? You came home safe and sound, that's all matters, Naruto. Chozo smiled lightly as he said this. Home, Naruto mumbled lightly, before falling asleep. Choza walked into his room and tucked him into bed. Yup. Home. Choza said to the sleeping Naruto, "Rest tight, little one." He lightly kissed Naruto's forehead before leaving the room, carefully closing the door as not to wake him. A yawn sounded from Naruto as he slowly got out of bed, unsure of how much time passed. I feel like a brick hit me then smacked me around a bunch. Quote. Naruto mentally groaned as he heard Kurama snort. The sad part is, you're probably not that far off. That pale face did a huge number on you and I'm still trying to get everything back into working shape after last night's adventure. Kurama explained, most likely mad at himself for letting it happen. You're right, I am. Kurama said, biting himself back from cursing for Naruto's sake, who snickered. Kurama simply growled before Naruto nervously backed off that train of thought. I wonder what's happening today. Kakashi-sensei never taught me that jutsu, so that should be happening later on. Oh no, am I late? Naruto shouted from the realization, rushing to try and find his clock, only to find out he was indeed running late. He rushed towards the door to get ready before Choza peeked through the door. Don't worry Naruto, you're heading to the Hokage before class, you'll meet up with them at the library, okay? Choza explained to the panicking Naruto, who visibly relaxed before yelling at Kurama to stop laughing. Choza himself joined in, much to the young boy's chagrin over being double-teamed on, which only inspired Choza to laugh harder. After getting fully ready, and eating a bit of Choza's cooking without the Akimichi-styled ingredients, which only furthered Naruto's running theory of the whole Akimichi gut with how Choza complained about it not being as good as the Akimichi food, but that Naruto needed to eat more than a small bowl of food. Kurama was between impressed and terrified with how accurate Naruto's theory was starting to seem. Naruto finally went towards the school, heading through towards the Hokage's office. After a quick greetings exchange between him and the secretary, Naruto opened the door to the Hokage's office and walked on in with a smile on his face, which grew when seeing Kakashi, but soon started turning into a shocked and terrified expression as he saw the multitude of different high-ranking ninja gathered around. He was quickly turning round about to walk out, thinking he was interfering in an important meeting until Kakashi turned towards him. There's the guest of honor, Naruto. Over here. Kakashi called out towards him. Naruto mentally cried as he walked back over. So, I promised to show you a new jutsu yesterday, correct? Kakashi asked to a resounding nod from Naruto. Kakashi mirrored it before continuing on. Right, so here's the signs for the jutsu of dog tiger s dog frog, and with that, just use something and you can use the informational exchange jutsu. Kakashi explained a tad awkwardly, stuttering a bit at the application of the jutsu, since it differs between users. For him, he used his dogs and they would bark out the jutsu, Anko's SS would hiss it out, while Kurenai would just use rose petals to apply the jutsu. Naruto's was a tad different, to where he took a deep breath as if mirroring the Uchiha's fireball jutsu, but then blew out a compressed pocket of air from his mouth. Kakashi and the others watched with curiosity written on their faces as the air bubble made its way slowly towards the sandame before popping. The scene around them all changed into what had happened the night previous, to which they mostly remained impartial until the moment Naruto let the man go in favor of watching the box, to which Kakashi congratulated him for his thinking, as well as Anko making a sketch of the face to send to the other workers of T&I to go after, before the memory played on. Their faces shifted into looks of concern, especially Hiruzen and Kakashi, when the masked man came up. Naruto looked away out of embarrassment on the long game of cat and mouse the two played, and while he expected ridicule for him nearly losing track multiple times, he gained none of it. Instead, a tense silence befell them as the memory continued down the sewer. Oh no. Please say it's not so. Naruto heard Hiruzen say as he saw him go down the sewer. Finally it led to the conversation Naruto barely overheard, and the man they saw. Oh dear. Danzo. Hiruzen said with heavy regret in his tone. Naruto was massively confused by this and was about to ask before Kurama growled out of his mouth. Is Danzo the name of that guy we saw? I have a funny feeling you have some things to explain, old fart, so I suggest you get started on what happened last night, and why there was a full group down there, yet they had to have a terrified man who was close to peeing his own pants deliver something for them instead of getting it themselves. It felt too easy of a target, as if they wanted us to find them, and I don't even know if we got spotted. Start explaining, you old fart. Kurama rudely cut the silence, but Naruto didn't do anything to apologize as they turned their heads towards Hiruzen. No one else except Kurama with his steady glare said a word. Hiruzen sighed in what looked to be resignation to the situation. Danzo is the head of the Citizen Council, which watch over my actions to make sure I don't become a dictator. Hiruzen began, perfectly ignoring Kurama's snort at the description. On top of that, he is a dear friend of mine who I told a while back to quit this foolish subdivision he had created. Kakashi here exposed his intentions to assassinate me years ago and helped me stop his plan. If it wasn't for the fear I have that he is what is stopping us from having a massive civil war on our hands, I would have killed him that day, but for the peace of you and your generation, I spared him. I won't let him get away with this, so Naruto. Let us handle that, it is way too dangerous for you to handle. Hiruzen explained, only to hear bitter laughter spawn from Naruto's mouth. Oh, cry me a river, best friend. The man tried to kill you, all for what? You to casually forgive him and have him still keep up his nefarious plans. Man, I thought the other one was an idiot, but you take the cake. What? Any more secrets you have to share? Any more murderers and traitors you chose to spare? Kurama spat out in a rage. Hiruzen flinched slightly, which made Kurama burst out laughing that bitter laugh. I'll leave that to you, I'm not playing politics with you, on to other matters. Eyelid, did you get any leads from your end? Kurama turned his attention away from the Hokage, who looked reduced to a regretful old fart in Kurama's eyes, in favor for Kakashi. For his credit, Kakashi showed no outward signs of acknowledging the nickname. We have some form of a lead, but it seems to be a rabbit hole going deeper, nothing concrete that I can show you all yet, sadly. Kakashi informed them, and soon after the meeting was adjourned. The other Jonin looked at Naruto, then Hiruzen, then back to Naruto before they left, while Kakashi decided to stay with a hand on Naruto's shoulder to stop him from leaving. Hiruzen coughed as Naruto turned back around. Are you alright, you two? Well, 3. Hiruzen asked calmly, but the tone suggested something akin to deep regret that made Naruto flinch back in guilt slightly. The move didn't get past the others in the room. Yes, Hokage-sama, Kakashi said stiffly, still having not recovered over the bombshell from just moments prior. Kurama had said what many of them were just too scared to ask out of a mixture of respect and fear of breaking it. Kurama had no chains in that front and broken that image they built up of him. How many more had he spared? How long has he done it for? What else had he done? The questions raked inside Kakashi's mind as well as many of the other Jonins that were in the room, but a job was a job. Danzo, and whoever was the murderer of Honoke, whoever has been trying to sabotage the academy, the mysteries kept getting deeper and deeper, like a rabbit hole that spiraled to another land of wonder. I don't know, Oji-san. I don't know. Naruto mumbled out, still trying to understand what had happened. It made for a pitying experience for the three, seeing Naruto nearly on the brink of tears as he raised his head with a fake grin to hide those tears, but I'll keep going. There's no way I can be Hokage if I give up here. So what if you messed up in the past? Question mark. Who cares? It's in the past. We just gotta clean the mess up and do right today. So let's keep going. Oji-san, you made mistakes in the past like everyone does, you're not a kami, you're not superior to us all. We're human, and that means cleaning after our mistakes with the help of friends and family, right? Naruto's false grin started turning truer and truer with each passing line as he watched the shock meet Hiruzen's eyes as well as Kakashi's eye. Tears started coming out of Hiruzen as he nodded, then let's do it. My ninja way is to always help those that require help and can't help themselves, so I'll help out in any way I can without running away. Naruto grinned with a cheeky snicker as he looked towards Hiruzen with closed, happy eyes. I believe you, Naruto. Maybe it is time that I pay for my past mistakes and clean after the messes I have made. I cannot do such a thing alone, but maybe with the help of you all, I can pay for those mistakes. Thank you for your kind words, Naruto. Hiruzen said with sincerity. He mentally sighed as he heard the snort from Kurama. Naruto opened his left eye to reveal the crimson touch to his eye color. He might forgive you easily, but don't you dare think that I do. It'll take more than that to convince me, but no actions speak louder than mere words ever could. Kurama told him before the red glint faded away back to Naruto, who had a smile take his face. You can go now, Naruto. I need to talk to Kakashi for a bit alone. I do believe you have a class to get going towards, don't you? Hiruzen smiled as Naruto panicked before quickly running off with hurried goodbyes to the two. As he left, a tense silence formed before Kakashi walked towards the desk and knelt before him. Rise. Hiruzen calmly said as Kakashi rose. You lied in front of Naruto, why? Hiruzen asked, having seen the subtle Anbu sign of lie that Kakashi had sent his way during the conversation with Naruto. Because what I found was something that he would try to dig through himself, and I didn't want to risk whoever was after him to find out we know. Kakashi stated simply, forming the signs for the jutsu to show him what happened. Right after splitting with Naruto, Kakashi and two other Anbu agents quickly sank through the window through a small crack in the window as they appeared below. Kakashi and the three dived in three different directions, one heading towards the many classrooms on the ground floor, another towards the upstairs classrooms, and Kakashi heading towards the facility records. After digging through the files, he searched for Naruto's file only to find a picture of the nine tails, Kurama, stapled over Naruto's face. On top of that, the words, "Begin Operation Tailed Sabotage effective immediately." Hiruzen repeated in a faint mumble to himself, absorbing the information from the files that Kakashi had seen. A frown took his once neutral face as Kakashi removed his masks. I don't at all know what to expect with this, but Naruto absolutely cannot know about this. Someone at the academy is trying to sabotage his whole class, if not the whole school. Someone high up in the academy ranks at that. If Naruto found out about this. Kakashi gritted his teeth in a deep frown. Hiruzen nodded. Take Iruka with you after they're done with class, bring him here and I'll assign your mission that I require from you both. Bring Anko here as well if you wish for her assistance on the mission, be back by nightfall, understood? Hiruzen said sternly as Kakashi nodded before shining away. Hiruzen sighed in annoyance this time before smoking from his pipe. So they are trying to sabotage through the academy. Hiruzen mumbled aloud as he turned off the seals that provided them with secrecy. Hokage-sama, your paperwork has come in. His assistant dumped a huge stack of papers on the desk, much to the tears of Hiruzen. An idea sprouted in his mind as he formed the seals to the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Another two hymns appeared. Yes, me, the clone on the left asked. We need to get these done, in order to see to the other manners. Can I trust us to break these into stacks and finish them? Hiruzen asked seriously, to the nods of the other two. Breaking it into 3 different stacks, they got to work. Naruto barely managed to fall into line as the class headed towards the library, which happened to be right next door to the Hokage's office all along. Hey Naruto, glad to see you back with us. Iruka smiled as he pointed him out, causing the other students to look back to the nervously laughing Naruto. Now the Academy Library is one of the most important places for a ninja, for it allows you access to scrolls detailing how to use certain jutsus or taijutsu styles. Now, you have access to getting 3 different items today, one of which must be a taijutsu style if you do not have one of your own, that are a way to use the style you have in a different way that would fit you if you have a clan style. If you need help, I'll be right over here, and you can ask your classmates on their own opinion. Have fun. Uruka said before finding a table to sit at. A grand majority of the students broke up and explored the library, yet Hinata walked over to Naruto with a smile on her face. Choji was also heading towards the group, scaring the shy Hinata a bit as Naruto grinned and ran up to the two. Hey guys, Naruto said, throwing his hands around the two he considered family in his eyes. Hinata blushed something fierce as Choji grinned back to his surrogate brother. Any ideas about what you're gonna be going after? Naruto asked, to which both looked slightly guilty looking at him, much to his confusion. What's wrong guys? Naruto asked, to which Choji recovered first. Sadly we have clan jutsu, so we have to go to the other section away from Ya. The other section is just for those that have clan jutsu, and if we're gonna find what we need we have to go there without you. Sorry about that Naruto, Choji explained, to which both looked downcast. Naruto simply pulled the 3 of them into a hug. It's fine guys, really. We'll meet up after this and help each other practice. I'll see you then, Naruto said with a caring grin on his face, to which the two returned it with smiles. He waved the two off before his smile started fading when they left his sight. A sigh later, Naruto turned back towards the section he was allowed to search through, noting the glare he received from the librarian, which he couldn't tell if it was because of him being loud or him being him. Another sigh was let out as he walked towards the taijutsu styles, seeing what could help him the most. That's a good question. What style would fit you the most? You prank people a lot from what little I watched of your younger days, and live off of being unpredictable. I think I know which of these styles could fit you, but I don't know if they even have it here. Head back to Iruka real quick, might as well make sure. Kurama told him as Naruto shrugged, making his way towards Iruka. Yeah Naruto, Iruka asked, curious about his inquiry. Iruka covered his mouth with a light warning, a part of my brain. Naruto asked, to which Iruka smiled and nodded, yeah, a part of my brain was wanting to ask you if a certain style was in this section, saying it would be the most helpful for me. Naruto explained, to which Iruka motioned him to continue on. Something called, the style of the flowing shadows? Naruto asked, to which a metaphorical light bulb lit up in Iruka's mind. I think I know the style you're referring about there. Sadly the one you're thinking of is only for genin and higher ranks to get. However, the beginning style of it, the style of the shadow step, should be here for you to use. While it's only the beginning style of it, it's made to build the foundation of the flowing shadows style up. You'll find it on row I subsection B if I recall correctly. Iruka said, to which Naruto nodded with a light bow and a grin, before running towards that area. The library was somewhat small, as it was only the academy student section, so he had to try and avoid many of the other students that now populated its small area. Kurama was repeating the area so that he would not forget while Naruto kept his search up. Eventually, he made it to the area Iruka described, only to find a crowd of girls in his way. Excuse me, he said as he tried getting through to subsection B, only for the girl to ignore him. He went for lightly pushing her out of the way in order to get through to the area. She acted indignant and tried pushing him back, but he was already on his way through and saying excuse me to the next one, just standing and blocking the path through. Eventually, and much to the ire of most of the females in his class, he got through to see 2 students that the girls were surrounding. Naruto ignored Sasuke and Sakura, instead trying to look for the shadow step style, but Sakura was the one that noticed him and the crowd looking ready to beat him up. Hey, What do you think you're doing? Sakura called out to him. Subsection B. Where are you? This is C. Ah. There it is. Naruto mumbled aloud, completely ignoring Sakura's call as he held the scroll containing the style he was looking for with a grin. He started heading over towards the jutsu area, but was walled off by the classmates. Hey! What's the big idea? Naruto shouted at the others, who only humphed as if he deserved it. He turned back to Sakura and Sasuke. What do you think you're doing? Sakura repeated herself, stomping up towards him. I was getting a taijutsu style for myself, as was the assignment assigned to us. Uruka said the style I was looking for was here, and lo and behold, it was with you all blocking the way towards it. I said excuse me and all that, but you simply ignored me. Naruto explained despite himself, only for Sasuke to walk up and put a hand on Sakura's shoulder, to which she looked heartsick before Sasuke pushed her back. Sasuke nodded to Naruto. What style did you get? Sasuke asked, looking actually curious on what the dobi was so excited to be studying. While Sasuke had clan jutsu, he wasn't allowed to get the clan style until he was at least a genin, and many didn't even know if Konoha still had it in its records. Thus, he was here and trying to find a style of his own. It's called the style of the shadow step. It wasn't really the one I was originally going to get, but that one is stuck on the genin rank, so I have to make do sadly. It relies on unpredictable movement and using multiple objects to create the illusion of you having multiple people attacking together against the enemy. Apparently it's a style that the Yondaime used in order to fight the Nine Tails years ago, but no one is completely sure of it. The idea came to my head and I figured since I tend to prank a lot of people, I could make good use of it. I think I might know a style you could use, but I'm not entirely sure. Naruto explained with a grin. While Sasuke's fangirls looked just about ready to end Naruto's existence, Sasuke smiled back. Oh, what would that be? Sasuke asked, intrigued on what the dobi thought he could use. He doubted it would be much help, but it was better than dealing with the fangirls over and over again. Even if it fell out, it might be a good start if anything else. Judging from your clan, you tend to use fire-styled techniques against people, so you would use trip wires to immobilize the enemy in order for your jutsu to hit and do damage, as well as a way to send your jutsu along specialized wires built to withstand the flame, correct? Naruto asked, not entirely sure himself and just going by what Kurama was explaining. Sasuke actually held a look of shock for a moment as he nodded. How did you know that? Sasuke stuttered out, surprised by how Naruto knew. Naruto, being Naruto, gave him a cheeky grin in return. Trade secret. But, with that all in mind, I think the style of the Roaring Dragons would be a good start for you, but I think that's also genin level. Maybe the start is this Dragon Step style. Naruto said, pointing to the style that laid next to his own. Hey, ironic. I think the styles are related to each other in some way. Funny huh? Naruto grinned as Sasuke looked over the style, impressed with how much it seemed to fit him. He pocketed the style with a smile of appreciation. Thanks dobi, here have this. Sasuke threw a jutsu scroll his way. Naruto fumbled a bit to catch it, but managed to read it. It's a wind jutsu that might fit you. It wouldn't work for me when I tried it, but who knows, you might find a use for it. We're even for this, Sasuke said as Naruto grinned. Friends, Naruto suggested, to which Sasuke seemed to think about it a bit. Who knows, Sasuke said instead before walking off. His fangirls looking torn on if they should follow or beat Naruto up. You got lucky this time, you baka. Sakura said before the fangirls followed Sasuke. Groaning from the whole ordeal, Naruto opened the scroll containing the wind jutsu. Wow, he has a pretty good eye of jutsu. This is what's called the wind style. Air bullet jutsu, or futon, wind bullet jutsu depending on who you ask. I'm impressed. This might actually fit your style pretty well as a distraction technique to set up the shadow step style. Kurama seemed actually impressed with Sasuke's choice, but Sasuke himself said that he couldn't use it. How could Naruto? Kurama scoffed at his thoughts. After this, tell Iruka to let you test with chakra paper. If my guess is right, you can more than definitely use this. Either way, he didn't say that you would be able to use all the techniques you get here. He just said you can get a limit of 3 today, most likely to switch and try out others if it doesn't suit you. Good job on the style you gave him. I think he appreciated it. But you totally guessed, didn't you? Kurama deadpanned as he asked, only to see Naruto nervously laugh in response. Kurama sighed and waved him off. Thankfully, I think your guess is right, but it's not the end of the world if it isn't, since he will probably ask Iruka what the Roaring Dragon's starter style is either way. Thought that matters. Kurama told him with a smirk as Naruto went in search of another jutsu to fit the one he grabbed, only to see Hinata walking towards him. Naruto, are you alright? Hinata asked, looking worried. Naruto nodded with a smile which Hinata returned. I'm glad. I was worried when I saw what happened there. Hinata continued, relieved that Naruto was okay. Thanks, Hinata. I hope you found everything you need. Naruto asked, to her smile. Why yeah, we're about to leave actually. You find all yours? Hinata told him, much to his shock. Oh no, I'm still one jutsu off. I was about to go check for another futon jutsu to go with the one I got just now. Naruto exclaimed, to which Hinata flinched a bit from the volume, much to Kurama's displeasure. Sorry about that, I got to get going to find another one, talk to you later. Naruto said in a lower volume, but before he ran off, Hinata was handing him a scroll. I had found a futon jutsu scroll that I thought might fit you Naruto, do you like it? Hinata asked, most likely wanting to twiddle her thumbs together, but her hands were trying to balance the 3 scrolls while giving Naruto his one. Naruto supported the pile a bit as it looked like it was about to fall, while accepting the scroll from her. Thanks Hinata, I appreciate it. Here, let me help with the scrolls. Naruto said, reaching over to grab the pile to help carry it, while Hinata moved back from the sudden reach. No, I got it. Hinata desperately pleaded it out, but to no avail. She almost tripped backwards, falling with the stack if not for the help of Sasuke, who was coming back and helped her to her feet. You alright? Is the Dobi messing with you? Sasuke said, looking angry from what he thought was Naruto being a pervert as Itachi used to call some people that did stuff like this. Naruto looked offended at the thought. No, thank you. Naruto was just trying to help me carry my scrolls. Hinata said, handing Naruto a few of the scrolls to carry. Did you find everything okay, Sasuke-kun? Hinata asked as the anger loosened a bit as Sasuke realized the situation. Why yes, I did. Sasuke stuttered, throwing a not so subtle look back towards the rabid fangirls starting to catch up with the 3. The other 2 blanked. Run. Naruto stuttered as well from fear. Run. Sasuke said simply, the 3 rushing forward while trying to balance the scrolls in their kid hands. The 3 didn't get that far before Iruka walked up and stopped them, making sure to block the rabid fangirl crowd from the 3, who looked completely terrified by the mob after them. Most of all being Sasuke, who seemed to hide behind Naruto and Hinata a bit. Iruka mentally chuckled at the idea of Sasuke using them as meat shields against the crowd, but looked back to the mob. We're in the library, an institution of silence, learning and building on our strengths and minimizing our weaknesses. Why are you chasing after these 3? Iruka said to them, with the ones still in the clan-styled library section stopping to watch. Multitudes of voices sounded off. Silence. Iruka shouted to them with a tad of killing intent in his tone, just enough to terrify them all, one at a time. You're growing to be ninjas, not audition for the interrupting Olympics. Act like it already. Uruka scolded them for their behavior some more, some of the students looking like they were about to cry out, some actually doing so, and some seeking Sasuke for comfort. Sasuke looked towards Sakura and mouthed some words towards her. I still believe in you, but not like this. Where's the Saku-chan that I met before? Sasuke asked childishly, as those words were what brought Sakura herself to tears. She moved through the crowd and ignored Uruka, Naruto and Hinata's exclaims of shock in order to hug Sasuke. I'm so sorry. Sakura apologized sobbingly, to which Sasuke returned the hug. It's okay Saku-chan, I missed you too. Sasuke said, shocking the entire class into silence. Ino looked downright furious as she pointed towards Sakura. Why you whore? Ino shouted viciously towards her. Ino. Uruka shouted back in disbelief. Where did she even learn that word? What's a whore? Naruto asked ignorantly, never even hearing about the word. Most of the class also wasn't sure what it meant, even Sakura, who the insult was going towards, only looked in confusion at it. Uruka filled the blanks for them. It's a very, very bad word that Ino is going to be in deep trouble for using and should never ever be used against anyone ever. Do you understand me? Uruka said very carefully and deliberately, angry that Ino dared use the word against her best friend. Ino humped and walked off, violently pushing against Sakura as she went out, 3 scrolls in hand. Sakura was still crying, but now for a different reason. Naruto was gritting his teeth as he thought about rushing out towards Ino for that, but then he saw Sakura crying on the ground. He looked towards Hinata, unaware of what to do as she nodded determinedly, taking Naruto's hand and rushing them both to Sakura's side. The 3, for both boys were at a loss of words and action until Hinata told them what to do, hugged Sakura and comforted her. It's okay Sakura, we're still here. We won't leave you like that. Hinata was the first to give her words of encouragement to her. Yeah Sakura, you can count on us. Naruto gave his second, his cheerful grin on his face looking slightly fake from the anger he still held for Ino. Saku-chan, you told me to stop seeking revenge, and saved me from myself. Now it's my turn to help you. Sasuke said out of determination, his more childlike persona shining through his front. Naruto smiled at this, thinking to himself that he liked this Sasuke a lot more than the one he met at the beginning. Kurama was curious on what caused him to be like this, but agreed with his charge's thought, and Uruka offered to carry their scrolls in a special handy-dandy scroll called a storage seal. They accepted and soon, they were helping Sakura home. You okay Sakura-chan? Naruto asked out of worry, as Sakura nodded. Sorry about earlier. I think what happened started when that big man gave me a flower. I didn't even notice what I was doing until Sasuke-kun did that. Sakura explained, shocking the 3. Why you mean that the fangirls? Sasuke stuttered out to receive a determined, and angry, nod from Sakura. Yeah, the man probably gave that flower to all of us. I'm sure of it, Sakura said before Naruto stepped up, thumb once again over his chest. Don't worry Sakura, I'll find out what happened for you. Naruto Uzumaki is on the case. Naruto grinned while Sasuke rolled his eyes. Been watching too much mystery shows lately. Sasuke smirked to the indignant pout he got in reply, don't worry Dobi, we'll find out together. We 4 should be a team. Sasuke explained, but Naruto shook his head. 5. Choji can help out too, and I bet he'll bring Shikamaru which will make us 6. Naruto explained, using his fingers to count them in. Sasuke shrugged as Sakura nodded along with Hinata. Then let's meet here tomorrow before school starts. Sakura grinned as they agreed before they all split off home, another day spent. Naruto yawned as he woke up, much to the snickering of Kurama. Mornin' Kurama, he greeted sleepily to his furry companion before blinking a few times. He stared at Kurama before blinking a few more times, not believing what he was seeing. Morning Naruto, how are you today? Kurama sarcastically replied, snickering all the while as his charge finally fully woke with a slight yell of shock, love you too. All joking aside, I called you here for a reason. Kurama began, as Naruto sleepily motioned him to go on. Kurama snorted before doing just that, do you even know what a genjutsu is? Kurama asked curiously, but expected a no to be the answer. A genwatsu? Naruto asked, confused. Kurama rolled his eyes from the expected answer. A genjutsu. Kurama pronounced the word carefully and slowly, hoping that would rush it through Naruto's brain. You mean those magic illusion stuff? Naruto asked, while Kurama groaned and struggled not to just drop the topic. I guess you can call it that. A genjutsu is a type of jutsu like ninjutsu and taijutsu, and as you stated, it's used for illusions to trick the mind. It's by far the most powerful of the three types of jutsu, but as such has the highest restrictions upon it. In order to use a genjutsu, you must have been put underneath the same type of illusion. Because of that, I really don't think it would help you to learn it, maybe minor ones that mess with the senses of the person, but nothing too serious. I only ask because of what happened to Pinky. Kurama explained, not at all remorseful for the genjutsu being placed on Sakura. Naruto rolled his eyes, it's obvious whoever put them under it expected it to be a slow burnout, and it went through smell if it was based on flowers. To put them under such a high-level genjutsu that no one noticed. I want to teach you how to break genjutsu, but my level is way too high to teach you, as mine would probably break your mind apart, even if I tone it to its simplest forms. Kurama sighed in frustration, obviously annoyed at this point. Naruto was about to ask how before thinking about it. Naruto sighed while Kurama snorted at the train of thought. I guess I can talk to the old man about it, see what he suggests. If that, maybe Kakashi-sensei can help. Naruto suggested, only receiving a shrug before being kicked out to an alarm clock blaring off. Sighing in annoyance, Naruto turned off the alarm and started getting ready, having started to wake up earlier as to not wait on Choji when he takes his showers. Choza waved to Naruto, causing a light smile to spread upon their faces before Naruto started taking a shower. Man, my days are starting to get busy. Naruto mumbled aloud to himself. Not unsurprisingly, Kurama answered. You got that right. Between pale face, lecturess a lot, cyclops hunting and now flower hunting, it's a wonder you're still focused in school. You totally been spacing out during school, haven't you? Kurama rolled his eyes when Naruto groaned out of annoyance. Not my fault if it puts me to sleep. Naruto whined to his friend, to only receive mental snickering as a reply. You okay there, Naruto? Choza's voice rang through in what sounded like just curiosity. Yeah, I'm fine. Naruto shouted back, to which he heard footsteps walking away. Making sure. Choza's voice rang back again, a bit lower in volume due to being in the process of walking away. Sighing, Naruto continued his shower in peace. It took a little while, but soon Naruto and Choza were sitting eating breakfast while Choji took his shower. Once more, regular non-akamaikai food, or so Kurama called it, seeing as all it was the same food minus the Akamichi secret ingredient, which Kurama had found absolutely hilarious when Naruto had asked Choza why Yakiniku Q's food was the only kind of regular food that he cared for. Choza had explained about the secret ingredient's effects on a meal, including its after effects of massively increasing the amount of calories to the food in exchange for the taste being massively increased, was on the table. Naruto ravened and savored the taste of the food while Choza barely touched his food with a look of disappointment. Choza looked up towards Naruto. Hey, Naruto. Choza seemed a bit nervous, noticing Naruto's peek up from his food towards him. How's school? Choza asked, obviously not knowing how to ask. Naruto grinned. It's really boring. Naruto cheerfully exclaimed without missing a single beat. Choza made a sound akin to a dying chicken as Naruto snickered a bit before elaborating. Most of the stuff Iruka-sensei lectures on and on about are stuff I learned from Kakashi-sensei and Ho. Naruto's voice tripped up on himself, cutting the obvious name short. He still wore a grin, but it seemed to stretch itself, desperate to not fall off. Naruto continued on a few seconds later, so I haven't really needed to pay attention. Kurama says I still should, but then again, he falls asleep first. Most of the time I fall asleep is when Iruka-sensei takes a million years to enter the class, but it's also when he tries talking about shinobi history. I've been trying but, it's just so boring. Naruto explained, completely shoving the moment behind without a second thought. Choza smiled, but his eyes failed to show it, only showing a bit of sadness instead. I see, are you at least practicing taijutsu and the like? Choza asked calmly, feeling that until Naruto was personally ready, he wouldn't push his surrogate grandson. While he would love to say surrogate son, that was Hanake's and always would be Hanake's place. Naruto sighed. If you could even call it that. Mizuki keeps showing us the basic style and not really helping with the styles we all chose. On top of that, he hasn't really done much to help correct the forms. I was thinking of asking Pokerface-san later on if he would help with that since he's a taijutsu god. Naruto said, not feeling like he was exaggerating even a small bit. Choza finally laughed his hearty laugh at the image. Have you ever met a green spandex wearing man yelling about? Choza asked, looking around cautiously before whispering the next word, youth. He said, hesitating before there was a knock at his door. Are you Fu? Choza almost cursed aloud before cutting himself off, looking at Choji and Naruto before groaning, I swear to Kami if it's him I'm saying that he is summoned by that forsaken word. Choza said instead, heading to the door to find it was in fact Guy, complete with green spandex and a nice guy smile. I heard someone talking about the wonderful powers of youth. Guy screamed out loudly before Choza casually slammed the door on him. Kurama cackled at the action. Naruto just looked confused before saying it was rude, while Choji just rolled his eyes. You'll take the back door exit out, Choji, show him the way. Choza said with dead seriousness, causing Kurama's cackles to start becoming audible. Choza rolled his eyes before smirking. Unless little Naruto here wants to see the most terrifying genjutsu in his life. He said, but failed to get any response other than confusion and what looked to be annoyance towards Kurama's cackles. Kurama didn't really seem to care, but quieted the cackles to snickering. Oh yeah, Kurama was mentioning something about genjutsu, Naruto said, trying to remember as Choza looked absolutely floored. You don't know about genjutsu? Choza asked, shocked that Iruka didn't teach it. I think Iruka-sensei was saying something about preserving our innocence and childhood. Or something, that in saying their supplies and the like been getting raided over the last 2 years and thus, they don't have the money to get genjutsu test dummies for us to practice on. Naruto explained, scrunching his face adorably as he tried remembering it all. At least, that's what he told Hinata-chan and me. He gave a shrug of defeat before following Choji off out the back. Choza didn't even move for a few seconds, trying to wrap his brain around what Naruto told him. Looks like I'm going to be having a chat with Iruka about this, could it be his comrades causing this behavior? Choza thought to himself, flashes of Iruka, Honoken, a dark-haired girl with sapphire blue eyes, smiled back at him as he pushed the memories away. Barely holding back a sigh, he opened the door again to find Guy still standing there. Where once a bright grin took his face stood a light frown. Are you alright, Choza-senpai? You called me earlier. Guy asked, for once being pretty light-spoken, which meant he was serious. Choza sighed, motioning the green spandex-wearing comrade inside before shutting the door. Choza? Guy asked, a tone of confusion appearing as Choza and him sat opposite each other. It's about Naruto. Choza began as Guy listened. I'm worried about him, especially about how Hanake's death has been bothering him. I wish to tell him about how I was his sensei, but Lord Hokage had said not to, as it was his cover right before he died and Naruto wasn't ready to learn it. I know Honoke wouldn't have wanted it to stay a secret, but I don't want to tip Lord Hokage's hand when the academy is under an attack of knowledge, as well as Danzo's whereabouts and how it all connects together. It's just an absolute mess and I don't even know where Naruto fits into all of this yet. Choza sighed, letting all his worries out as he told Guy about what Naruto had told him not long before. The mere fact that he didn't even know what genjutsu was other than by Kurama means one of two things. Either one, Hanake's death has made Iruka terrified of what will happen to the students, or two, there's a spy that's intentionally sabotaging the academy classes. Judging from what I've heard from Iruka, it seems to be the latter. I need you, with all your Eunice, to find Kakashi and tell him I need to speak with him about that. Naruto isn't prepared for this mess, and it's only going to get worse before it gets better. Guy, I know I'm as, Choza began before Guy grinned. Don't worry Choza-senpai, I'll be sure to get Kakashi and let Lord Hokage know your worries. Don't worry about Naruto, he'll pull through. Just believe in the power of youth. Guy said, giving a much more tamed smile before continuing, it's only natural to feel like this Choza-senpai, what with another one of your group having. Guy faltered a bit when he saw Choza flinch back at the reminder, biting back a grimace. Guy continued, but you have to remember that Naruto, Choji and the others need you here. Worry only makes things worse, but action is the road you must take. While I talk to Kakashi and Lord Hokage, try talking to Naruto and Iruka, and let them know your worries, okay? Maybe having someone to talk to will help you, instead of bottling it in like this. I worry about you, Guy admitted with a sigh. Choza nodded briefly before Guy looked up in sudden realization, oh yeah. I almost forgot. Lord Hokage was wanting you to bring Naruto, Choji and Hinata to him after their respective lessons today. He said that he'll let them know about this, but it had to be secret and the like. He was wanting to see them around 8, give or take an hour or so, in order to talk to them about something. Guy explained with an excited voice. Choza smirked. Same old guy huh, still being used as a messenger boy. Choza had a hearty laugh at the look of indignation that spread across the other's face. Guy sighed a bit as he smiled at Choza's laugh before chuckling himself at it. You got me there Choza-senpai. I think Kakashi is still adjusting to having quit Anbu just a while ago. Guy said, wanting to change the topic off of himself. Choza shrugged at that. Yeah, it was only a few months ago wasn't it? More surprised he was even nice to Naruto and them when he was training him with Honoke. Choza sighed. Hopefully Kakashi isn't falling back into his Anbu ways with this mission. I would hate to see Minato's boys both be in danger like this. Choza said, to which Guy looked a bit confused. I know Kakashi trained under Minato, but who's the other one? Guy asked as Choza shrugged. Guy groaned, need to know. Choza heartily laughed once more as they continued talking about more leisurely topics from there on. Nothing important was really said and soon enough, Guy bid Choza farewell. You can come out of hiding Tenzo, or do you go by Yamato these days? Choza said towards a corner in his room before Tenzo came out of the wall frame. How did you know I was here? Tenzo asked politely. The frame was a bit bigger than usual, as well as a tad rounded. Choza explained as Tenzo nodded. I'll keep that in mind next time I try hiding. Tenzo said as he looked towards Choza, do you need my help? He asked as Choza looked to think about for a few seconds. Not entirely sure yet on that, but I bet Lord Hokage will need your help about Danzo sooner or later. May I inquire on why you were here since Naruto walked into my kitchen? Choza asked, the mood becoming somewhat tense at that. I was assigned as his guard, in case anything happened to him. I stayed because I was reassigned to help you deal with a special matter that will probably take a bit of time. Tenzo explained calmly. Ah, scroll? Choza asked, to which Tenzo handed him a mission scroll. Choza grimaced a bit at the contents. Who's going to be looking after Choji and Naruto while I work this? He asked. The Naras have agreed to look after the two of them while you're away on the mission. It's very urgent that this gets done by you, as you still are the only one that can convince him to step off this path. Lord Hokage would do it himself, but he's still trying to get the information from the spies as well as the information surrounding Danzo and the academy all sorted out. He needs you to do this so he can focus on those things. I'm sure you understand, Tenzo explained. Choza groaned a bit. Squad? Choza asked as Tenzo pointed to them both. Just us. Great. All except on the condition that I talk to Naruto and Choji about it before heading out. Choza explained, not wanting to leave them a note and the like. Tenzo nodded. I'm assuming that's what the meeting with you and the three children later on was going to be about. That among many other things. Tenzo explained as the two nodded. Choza mentally sighed. Great. Looks like Rain is acting up again. The mission contents laid open before him. With the Rain Village cooks being written on top with the words investigation needed written in red underneath it. Choza grimaced a bit, worried at what was happening in the village this time. The time before last, he was stopped before even entering and had to work outside the village before eventually leaving with no information whatsoever. Then the last time he came and brought his food, he was welcomed in and heard talk of the Kami-sama, blessing them with Choza's cooking. Apparently this time they wanted information on this so-called Kami-sama, and needed him to work with Jiraiya to get it. Sighing physically this time, Choza pocketed the mission scroll and got up. It was just to be him and Tenzo on this mission, most likely using Tenzo as an apprentice to him and Jiraiya as a local friend of his. He wished to just not do it, and to be with Naruto and Choji more, but sadly this was too important to deny, and Lord Hokage needed the time to focus on the other topics. Naruto grinned as he and Choji arrived in class with the others. After taking their respective seats, Naruto finally had a layout of the room. Choji, Shikamaru and Ino Tem sat at the right corner on the top row, with Shino, a quiet kid that Naruto liked talking to when he realized he sat the seat above him, Kiba, who yelled nearly as much as him, causing many arguments between the two of them, sat to Shino's left, as well as a kid that Naruto really never talked to who sat to Shino's right. No one sat next to Naruto, but he didn't really mind. Sakura sat across the gap of Naruto, taking her seat next to Sasuke, who sat in the middle with a boy Naruto didn't know sitting next to him. Hinata sat in the middle of two boys that Naruto didn't know, but Hinata never cared to talk to them, preferring to turn around and talk to Naruto, which made him happy for some reason. In front of Sasuke sat a group of two boys and a girl that Naruto never really talked to, but remembered as those that took their time just to bully him when he was still in the orphanage. Why was Naruto listing all of this in his mind? Well, he was bored. Really bored. You, Iruka-sensei. Naruto whined aloud to no one in particular, annoyed that it was 10 minutes after the bell rang and his sensei still hadn't arrived yet. Hinata turned to face him with a hopeful smile. Well, Naruto, maybe we can talk a bit with the G group while he's not here. Hinata asked, getting the attention of the aforementioned group. Naruto grinned in response while Sakura and Sasuke started walking over to sit on both sides of Naruto. Shino still sat above while Kiba snorted before turning away, though he didn't move. Shikamaru groaned as Choji dragged him over. Ino huffed before Naruto sent her a hateful glare. Ino flinched before staying where she was. Ino. Sakura stuttered only to be ignored. She felt bad over what had happened yesterday in the academy library, but every try that Sakura tried to apologize, Ino would either ignore her completely, or would yell at her to stop trying. Sasuke sighed as he put his hand on Sakura. It's fine, Sasuke said, causing the group to stare at him. He felt a bit nervous from the glances. I mean, remember what we talked about yesterday, if they're under a genjutsu, then of course whoever's here doesn't want us learning genjutsu and how to break it. All we gotta do is find a way for Kakashi-sensei and the others to believe us and have them break them out of it. If we do that, most likely it'll make Ino and the others back to how they were before whatever genjutsu got placed on you all. Sasuke explained, causing the others to look in awe. What? Sasuke stuttered out of nervousness. You actually said sentences. Naruto said in disbelief, with many of the others agreeing with him. Sasuke was unable to hide the blush that rose with that before huffing and turning away. Naruto rolled his eyes before turning to Sakura. So, Naruto began, but was cut off by Iruka entering the room along with Mizuki. Morning class, get to your assigned seats. Iruka said with a smile on his face as Sakura looked sorrowful towards Naruto, mouthing the words, maybe later. Before heading back to her seat, Naruto nodded with a smile that didn't quite meet his eyes. Hinata gave him a hopeful smile, which caused his smile to become a bit less strained. A small voice in his head wondered if Hinata was under a similar genjutsu and would hate her if they snapped her out of it. Doubtful. The Hyuga clan tend to have a natural immunity to genjutsu due to their eyes. On top of that, even if she was one that had gotten the flowers, Paleface would most certainly have noticed and snapped her out of it. Kurama explained with a light shrug back. Then what about Ino? Wouldn't her dad have noticed? Naruto thought back as Iruka began another boring lecture. It was another one about the basics of chakra, but this time he went into starting them off with a textbook. Groaning, Naruto turned along with them, noting that even Sakura was looking bored, Shikamaru and Choji were sleeping, and Shino was thinking of walking and sitting next to Naruto just to see if Iruka would say anything or notice him moving. Naruto looked at Shino with a light nod when Iruka closed his eyes as he went through his lecture, and as Shino and Naruto thought, didn't notice Shino sit right of Naruto. Shino looked crestfallen as Naruto snickered. Honestly, I've been asking myself the same question. Ask the sleepy brat, maybe he would know. Kurama groaned back, frustrated at his own ignorance. Naruto stared at the textbook, a passage catching his eye. No one entirely knows where chakra had come from, but research shows that there once was no chakra ruling the land. After an event of unknown origin, chakra filled the world and fractured it. The zone we live in contains the least amount of what is known as natural chakra, since an overload of this would cause humans to turn into stone. However, sages are humans that have mastered the balance between their own chakra and the natural chakra that now rules the world. Summons, or animal clans that allow ninjas to summon them to help with battle, each took a zone to their own to rule, which when taught the summoning jutsu, can be used to create a pact with a certain clan, or clans as some have been known to associate with. Most only conform with one clan of summons, however, there are examples of some forming with two summonable clans. Naruto read aloud, not noticing how the class, along with Iruka-sensei, turned to stare at him while he read. Naruto was thinking of continuing before Iruka-sensei coughed, snagging his attention. Wah! He shouted, falling back from his bench from the shock, much to the chuckles of his classmates. Embarrassed, Naruto pouted slightly, but a smile slid onto his face when Hinata smiled at him. Kurama and Iruka-sensei mentally snickered at the sight before Iruka-sensei rolled his eyes at his students. Naruto, you do know that's the third year's book, right? Iruka-sensei asked, showing him a copy of the pre-academy book, which Naruto had already read through, as well as the first and second years. He had been bored and Choza and Choji read through it with him. But sensei, I already read through the first, and second year books. Most of them are just the bare basics of chakra and nothing more. Naruto explained, surprising most of the class aside from Choji, who smirked. He has. Dad and I read it with him over the last few days. The problem is that most of what the book contains are just the foundations that the clans teach you even before entering the academy. Naruto was curious, as was I, so we asked Dad and we were going through the other books. I'm only about halfway through the second year book, but Naruto had read through the night it seems. Choji shrugged, smirk still on his face. Shikamaru and Ino stared at him like he'd grown a second head. See, can I read some of those books later on? Shikamaru and Sakura asked Choji and Naruto respectfully simultaneously, much to their laughter. Sure. The two spoke in union, resulting in a groan from Iruka-sensei. Iruka-sensei had a light frown on his face as he stared at the four. You know, the reason we put it like this is to make sure we build up your chakra reserves and physical strength a good bit before complicating it more. It's best to start it in the third and second years since you would have a good baseline by then. Iruka-sensei explained, which Sakura frowned too. Sure, that can be the case, but we would still need the information. That's 2 to 3 years with nothing but the bare basics of chakra when we could at least learn about chakra control as well. Sakura said, having glanced at the word in the brief bit she had grabbed Naruto's third year book. Naruto rolled his eyes when he realized that it happened. Iruka-sensei deflated slightly. Okay. How about I come to a compromise with you all? You have 5 total years in the academy instead of the normal 4 most do, so I can start with this year to build up your reserves, teach you all the basics of chakra and chakra control, and the shinobi history. But, jutsus wouldn't really be touched until year 2, or until you can all be able to use the 2 jutsus you have grabbed. Deal? Iruka-sensei asked, reduced to having to bargain with his class at Sakura's comment, since she was right in that fact. Chakra control was one of the most basic aspects of chakra and wasn't touched until year 4 of all things. Deal? The class shouted, aside from a few people, as one. Iruka sighed before nodding himself. Okay then, let's explain chakra control a bit real quick then. As everyone knows, Iruka-sensei started, heading to the board and bringing down a chakra network diagram, composed from both a Hyuga's help of seeing the network, as well as a genjutsu user to draw it down, and continued, the entire body of anyone contains what is known as a chakra network. A normal chakra network consists of. Iruka-sensei asked, wanting to call on someone. Naruto, Sakura, and Hinata's hand shot up, even though Hinata's shot up a bit shaky compared to the others. Iruka-sensei smiled as he asked, Hinata. Hinata froze a bit before coughing and standing up. The chakra network consists of the chakra core, where all the chakra builds up and is stored in, the 8 chakra gates, which limits the amount of chakra that goes to each point, with chakra signs being used to direct the chakra flow across the network, as well as 361 chakra points, spreading across the entire body. Hinata stuttered heavily through the explanation, but the meaning still reigned clear throughout it all. Iruka-sensei nodded happily. Correct. Now, the amount of chakra within the chakra core can go up or down via use and practice, as well as physical training. Chakra acts as natural energy for the body, and the more you use, the more it recovers for tomorrow. Let's say our chakra was a number of 100 for everyone for an example. If I use all 100 points, I would die from a severe lack of chakra. I can use 95 without dying, but be left with chakra exhaustion, which is. Iruka-sensei said, freezing the class with the word death. Naruto paled over and struggled to calm himself. Iruka mentally cursed himself for the lack of tact as Shino raised his hand. Shino? Iruka-sensei asked, though his eyes still stayed somewhat locked towards Naruto nervously. If someone uses too much chakra, your body can pass out, like if you jog too much, you would naturally get exhausted. Fact. Chakra exhaustion comes in 3 types, severe which is mostly always fatal, moderate which can leave someone on bed rest for 4 to 5 days, and mild which can leave someone on bed rest for 1 to 3 days. Shino said quietly, knowing no one else would have recovered fast enough to avoid talking. Shino turned towards Naruto and placed a hand on his shoulder. Noting the lack of reaction, he let one of his insects on over. The insect bit and soon Naruto snapped out of his funk with a jolt. Though Naruto was a bit angry at this, nearly shouting in pain from it, he instead turned to Shino with a grin. "Thanks, Shino," he instead said. Shino nodded and soon the entire class was back to normal. Iruka coughed, noting how each one needed Shino's insect to snap them out of it and didn't care to mention Shino talking for once. "Thank you Shino for the explanation, as that is correct," Iruka-sensei said after a moment of awe. The entire class turned to Shino with a look of shock. "He talks," Ino shouted out of surprise, never knowing Shino to talk. Naruto and the rest of the academy group, currently consisting of Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, Hinata, Choji, Shikamaru was dragged in this morning by Choji, and Shino joined with Hinata's help, rolled their eyes. Kiba was still on the fence on if he'll join, but even he rolled his eyes at Ino's comment. "Of course he talks. He's like Hinata and shy." Kiba and Naruto both shouted, "Don't copy me Dobi, dog breath." The two got into another argument before Sasuke and Sakura got them to break it up. Ino looked hurt as she stared at Sasuke. What does she have that I don't? Ino thought miserably as Sakura looked towards her, sorrow on her face. Ino made an angry sound before looking away. A part of her felt like it was dying, but she ignored it even when part of her wished she didn't. "Enough." Iruka-sensei groaned as the bell rang. Iruka-sensei sighed. Before realizing no one had moved, "I take it you want to learn more." Iruka-sensei looked surprised at this, since most days they couldn't wait to run out, even if it had only been 3 days in total. They shook their heads as Iruka continued explaining chakra control before the academy bell rang. Then Iruka had to let them go. The academy group got together, with Kiba also joining them. "So, any plans?" Sakura asked the others. Most shrugged or shook their heads, aside from Naruto. "Well, I gotta talk to Pokerface-san and ask if he can help me with the taijutsu style." "Sasuke, want to come with?" Naruto asked, not noticing the blush that rushed to Hinata's face. Sakura had a look on her face before Sasuke beat her to it. "How about we all go with? We all could use the help and it could help us learn in the end." Sasuke asked, to which Shikamaru shook his head. "Can't. Dad said to not go to other clans for help with it, I'm to train with him," he explained, much to the disappointment of the others. Choji was next with a disappointed face of his own. "Sadly Dad is the only one that can help with it, but I can if he lets me," Choji explained, much to the determined face of Naruto, who promised to help with that. Choji smiled to that. "I can probably see if my father would let me, but I'm not entirely sure he'll let me," Shino explained as Naruto put a hand on his shoulder out of understanding. "When were you here?" Kiba shouted, having not noticed him. Shino pouted at this. "I've been here the whole time," Shino whined while Naruto and Sakura comforted him. Well, Mom wants me to train with her, and not like I'm a part of this or anything," Kiba stuttered out, trying to act like he wasn't part of the group. Akamaru bit his foot before getting on Naruto's head. Kurama growled a bit at that before Akamaru growled back. "You want to go you dog breath." Kurama mentally screamed at Akamaru as Naruto covered his mouth. Most of them looked confused before Hinata and Choji had a realization. "Don't mind him, this happens a lot. He kinda has a split personality." Choji tried explaining it, not wanting to let on the fact about Kurama. Sakura gained a glint in her eyes at this. "I found another one, Shanaru." "You mean that imaginary friend of his?" Sasuke asked. remembering Naruto having mentioned something about a Kurama during training, as well as that time he and Hinata were trapped in that storage closet. Choji panicked. Why yeah, I guess that's a good way to describe it. Choji looked completely unsure, stuttering just as bad as Hinata before hurrying them out the door. Kurama and Akamaru continued yelling at each before Naruto went into his head, eyes glossing into blankness. Will you two shut up already? Naruto yelled at Kurama and Akamaru, knowing that somehow Akamaru was hearing Kurama. The two stopped their growling and stared at him. Please? Question mark. You guys are giving me a headache and the others are trying to talk. At least agree to disagree or something. Naruto continued as the two snorted and looked away from each other. No food for a week and I will subject you to Choji's eating for the next week. Naruto threatened the two. Kurama looked downright terrified as Akamaru looked confused. As for you, I will tell Kiba's mom you were the one that peed on her sandals. Naruto threatened, mostly guessing and somehow getting it right again. Akamaru looked just as terrified as Kurama did as Kiba looked completely confused along with the others. Naruto smirked. Then stop fighting each other, become friends and I won't do that. Naruto commanded as the two immediately stopped fighting, shook hands before Naruto exited his mind, eyes turning back to blue with a backdrop of red. What was that? Kiba stuttered, watching as Akamaru bowed towards Naruto before jumping on Kiba's face. Naruto smirked. Call me the dog whisperer, cause me and Akamaru came to an understanding just now. Naruto joked, not noticing Sasuke's shocked face. Did his eyes just pale out? Is that a type of dojutsu? Sasuke wasn't sure what he had saw, but Naruto's eyes shifted a lot now that he thought about it. Was Kurama, whoever he was, actually an imaginary friend? Naruto grinned at Sasuke at this. Well, we best be heading out I guess, wouldn't want to keep Pokerface-san waiting. Oh, but first, Naruto said, rushing ahead towards a store. Get out of here. The group heard as Naruto was, quite literally mind you, kicked out of the store. Stupid old man. Naruto yelled back at him, only to have to head to the others defeated. Yesh, you okay man? Kiba asked, oddly calm for once. Naruto shrugged. This always happens to be honest, why I have this? Naruto said, tugging at his standard orange jumpsuit, only thing I could get. He explained. Was trying to buy something for the Hyugas, there was an old lady that wanted some, Naruto said as Hinata rolled her eyes. They wanted some red tomatoes. Don't worry, I'll grab it for you. Hinata said, coolly grabbing the cash from Naruto as she went in, desperately avoiding mentioning the blush that went across her face. Kiba giving a wolf whistle ended both of them in blushes. Sakura sighed as she and Shino grabbed Hinata and Naruto respectfully, before Sasuke bought the tomatoes for them. Shino looked around as Choji walked and picked Naruto up. I'm sure Dad will forgive me this time, thanks Shino. Choji grinned as Shino nodded. No problem, Shino said quietly before he, Kiba and Shikamaru, who was oddly silent, split from the group. Shikamaru looked towards Naruto, thoughtful, but said nothing as he left. A shiver went down Choji's back. Yesh, seems he picked up the mystery. Was hoping he wouldn't, Choji thought, not wanting to be the idiot to release the information of an S-ranked secret. He and Hinata were both sworn into secrecy that first night after finding out by the Hokage himself, and it terrified them both when he stressed the importance of, tell and you will be hunted as criminals, to them both. Another shiver fled down his spine as they had reached the Hyuga estate. At this point, Naruto and Hinata had finally gotten up and got out of their grips with a, "TT thank you," from Hinata and a, "thanks Choji," from Naruto. The group knocked on the door as Neji opened it with a groan. Oh great, it brought friends. Neji bitterly spat out with a glare. Hey knock it off. Naruto spat back with his own glare. Hinata is her own person, so what if she brings friends? Still more than you would ever have with your holier-than-thou attitude. Naruto continued, mocking Neji's tone during the insult. Hinata and the others barely withheld snickers as it showed upon their face. Neji growled. Shut up, Neji said, pushing past him, only to be stopped by Sasuke. Unhand me. Neji tried shaking him off, but Sasuke refused. Apologize to them, Sasuke said, eyes pointing towards Naruto and Hinata. Neji brought his palm to Sasuke's chakra point, removing the feeling from it and his knee as Sasuke was forced to let go. Neji looked unrepentant as Sasuke yelled in pain, collapsing to the ground in a dry heap from the hits to his knee. Hinata stepped forward with anger filling her eyes. That's enough. A voice boomed from in the gate as Hinata was about to stand her ground against her cousin brother person. Hiashi walked forward towards Sasuke to help him up. Hinata, bring him towards the nursery while I deal with this. You all, head inside. Hiashi coldly instructed them, to which, even if reluctantly, complied. Naruto looked back. Go. Hiashi replied with a smile as Naruto nodded and closed the gate behind him. Immediately the smile fell. That was completely uncalled for Neji. Hiashi began his scolding. Neji scoffed. Yeah right, like you're any better. All you do is baby Hinata, Hinata this, Hinata that. Neji spat back with rage boiling. Neji Hyuga, Hiashi yelled, you are the representation of this clan. Hiashi continued as Neji ripped his head scarf off, revealing a bird-like seal that the scarf was hiding. Yeah, and what does this thing mean? Neji shouted back, pointing to a seal placed on his head. This thing already been used again and again as a way for you all to get away with everything. All you do is just continue using that damn jutsu against me. Neji continued, tears unintentionally welling up in his eyes. Why? Neji sobbed out, deep with hurt and rage. Why me? He sobbed onward, falling to his knees in a tearful sob. Hiashi sighed, walking towards his son as he noticed the audience forming round them. He glared as they all walked away as if they saw nothing. He looked back towards his son and knelt down, hugging him. I know it's tough, Neji. And as much as I want to help you, I cannot. It's a curse you must learn to live with for now, but mark my words, I will not let you die to it. So hold strong. Hiashi comforted him, but Neji continued to cry more. The two continued this for a few hours as it grew dark. Meanwhile, Sasuke groaned as Hinata took his arm and wrapped it around her body in order to carry him to the Hyuga infirmary. Why? Sasuke groaned out, lightheaded as he was from the pain, to Hinata. She for her part, rolled her eyes. You're a friend of a friend, and that makes you my friend. I never abandon friends in need. That's my ninja way. Hinata said, stutter returning somewhat as she headed inside the compound, rounding a corner to drop Sasuke off. It doesn't hurt that much. Sasuke said, but Hinata looked unimpressed. Sasuke groaned out in pain as she lightly tapped his foot. Hinata put him on an infirmary bed, happy that it was one of the closest rooms to the entrance of the main clan building. The Hyuga workers took one look at Sasuke, tapped the 3 spots that Neji had hastily closed off before looking to Hinata. I take it your brother went after him. Tell him that his skill is too rash, and he improperly closes the point, allowing just one touch to them to spring it back to full health. The nurse spat, but not towards Hinata. Hinata was nervous from the tone, even as she noted that it was Neji she was made at and not herself. It didn't help as Sasuke slowly got back up, testing his body before nodding. Bowing slightly, the two were off to rejoin Naruto, having found him wandering around the center with the group as lost as can be. I'm sure it's this way. The two heard Naruto said, before he spotted them, oh hey Sasuke, Hinata, we were waiting on you. Naruto admitted, much to the anger of Sakura, who looked absolutely ready to punch him for leading them around in circles. No longer having to stall for time, they grouped up and moved on their way. Naruto and the rest of the group traveled towards the more poor side of the large Hyuga compound. Hinata went off to make sure that Hiashi didn't wait alone, as well as to see if he needed help with Neji, much to Naruto's chagrin after seeing her off with Sasuke. The old lady from earlier was on her porch, eating the red tomatoes that Neji had bought for her just the day before. Naruto groaned at his sudden and rather late realization that so many important events in his life loved to go one right after another. Hey, I mean, it keeps you on your toes. Kurama grinned as Naruto groaned that bit more. Wow, so helpful. Naruto thought back remorseless of the whine in his tone, much to the laughter of his friend. The groans caused the lady to notice them, mostly confused and a tad offended at being groaned at as a greeting. And who are you? She raised an eyebrow as Naruto shook off his previous mood, handing the basket of red tomatoes to her. Her eyes gained a glint that Naruto realized he mirrored every time he saw or heard ramen mentioned in a conversation. Why, thank you. Now why are you doing this? She said, putting the basket down as she stared at Naruto and the group. Naruto nervously laughed a bit. I kinda heard you yelling at that Tem yesterday, and I was wanting to do something to help you out. Naruto said, oblivious to the unimpressed glare present on the lady's face, before Sakura moved him over with a pleading look on her face for the lady to forgive him. Don't mind him, he's dumb and the like. We came because we wanted to help you out with being able to do the things you wish to do, but can't because of age. Sakura amended, but even she was pushed aside by Sasuke as the lady still looked unimpressed with the motive behind it. We wished to share our bounty with you. We bought these tomatoes as a peace offering over what had happened yesterday as a sign of forgiveness. Sasuke explained, having learned of the events when the group met up that morning, and this time the lady relented. Sasuke smirked at the others with a stroke of pride before the lady began to speak. Ah, that explains it. Well, what are you waiting for? Let's eat. She said, as Sasuke took the basket and the group headed inside, ready to make a meal. Sasuke and Naruto grabbed a few spare ingredients and wordlessly got to work on a basic recipe, having boiled the tomatoes down into a simple soup for her to be able to eat without much trouble. Naruto grabbed the noodles, and Sasuke began work on the soup base as Sakura and the rest of the group watched in speechless awe at the actions. The lady chuckled mirthfully at the cook's friends, watching as the two began working at a rhythm that most struggled to fall into. She knew the rumors, how the boy in orange was an orphan having lived without anyone watching over him for more than a few years, if the rumors about how he was treated in the orphanage since he was 2 are anything to say. He probably also learned cooking since he now was under protection of the Akamichi, and by extension the Nara and Yamanaka clan. The boy in a darkish red was said to be the second to last Uchiha left alive besides the now missing Nin, Itachi Uchiha, and is even the younger brother of said missing Nin, having been alone since the boy was just 3. She watched the two continue cooking in near unison, much to even her own surprise. Akino Hyuga was not an easy woman to please by any account, having a temper that was not that far behind the legendary Sanin's own Tsunade. These two boys only very recently met each other if rumors were to be believed, and they most likely had not done this before if the reactions of her guests were to be believed. Soon after, the newly dubbed tomato ramen paste was dished out to be served to them all. Naruto grinned happily while Sasuke smirked, both equally proud of their cooking skill. Akino might not have had the Byakugan, but even she could see the not-so-subtle fist pump the two shared. Rolling her eyes, she instead watched the group nearly attack the two with awed questions before both of them instead motioned for the meal. Before the pink-haired one took a single bite, Naruto stopped her. Sakura, wait. First, we must give respect for the ones that gave us this meal. To the farmers that gave us the vey plants that eventually became the tomatoes in our paste. To the kamis for sending down their ramen for us to enjoy, and to the water that became our broth, as well as to the ninja protecting us all that allow us to eat this meal in peaceful times. Naruto recited, head down in what looked to be a bastardized prayer. The pink-haired girl, now dubbed as Sakura, had her eye twitch in frustration. Akino laughed as she too joined him in this weird prayer over their meal. Sasuke had stayed silent, most likely understanding why Naruto had done this from his many times eating with the two. The rest of the group also stayed quiet, not wishing to interrupt. The chubby one, obviously an Akamichi, groaned at him, "Can we eat now? I'm starving." The Akamichi whined as Naruto grinned once more. He immediately dug into his meal and looked towards the two. "I want this recipe," he eventually said, much to the cheers of the two. Akino watched as similar praises spread across from the rest of the group before eventually Sakura ate hers. "How can you two cook this good?" Sakura childishly asked as the two laughed at the question. "We've been cooking for quite a long while. On top of that, I guess I'm a natural. Uncle Choza lets me cook in the kitchen now and again. Heck, sometimes he invites Sasuke over so we can train together, so we would cook the supper that day." Naruto explains with a wide grin, which while somewhat reluctant, Sasuke mirrors with a small smile upon his face. Akino finally tasted her soup, which was quite good and easy to eat. Looking in surprise, she turned to the two. "I have seen fully aged cooks that are honored as high-ranking chefs make worse food than you two. I can see you two having a great future together," she said, causing a blush to mirror between the two as they quickly pushed the other away. "It's not like that," the two shouted as one, causing laughter to spread to the others at the jab. Akino relented after a few more minutes of this. "Thank you for visiting me. I know your days are busy as young ones' days should, but never forget to leave room for the nice restful moments you can get." Akino thanked them with as much respect as her old bones could give. The group nodded to them. "I hope you all can visit again someday. Sorry about the small compartments," she continued on, motioning to the one-room apartment she had, as the rest belonged to the other Byakugan-less Hyugas. Naruto's grin faded at that. "Why is this place so small? Aren't you an Hyuga?" Naruto asked, remembering what he'd seen of Hinata's house and thusly confused on Akino's living conditions. Akino smiled grimly. "Yes, but I'm what's called a failed Hyuga, for my lack of the signature Byakugan that we're known for. About 10% of all Hyugas never gain their Byakugan, or are born without the DNA necessary to even contain it, and if we have no other clan to reside in, we are cast to the very shadows of this complex, heading the closest village homes in order to act as cannon fodder in case of any attackers come to us," Akino said sadly. Sakura and the others gasped in shock in some form or another. "That's horrible," Sakura exclaimed in great pity of Akino's situation. She simply waved the unwanted pity away. "Please, I've been making do with my situation, and it's not all bad. Us Byakuganless people all stick together, and we know the full way around the compound that the main Hyuga never focus on learning. We make do with our situation." Akino smiled as Naruto's eyes gained a glint to them. "Secret passages?" Naruto asked as the group leaned closer with their own looks of curiosity shining on their face. Akino laughed at the childish wonder before nodding. "Yup. Long ago the Hyuga were under constant threat as the vanguard of the village. However, they never had the mobility that many of the other clans were known for. The Senju, the leaders of the village, were known for their wood style and making trees to quickly send them into battle. The Uchiha used their crow summons as well as the Konoha tunnels to send them to battle, but the Hyuga were denied access to these tunnels from a lack of knowledge on how to use them. Thus, the Hyuga created their own network that might or might not connect to said Konoha tunnels, were made only to cover from all around the compound to 4 main cardinal planes from here in 10 miles of each direction. Using these tunnels, they surprised many of their opponents, who quoted Hyugas to pop out of the ground all at once to surround and beat their opponents, while being able to use them in order to fight on the front line alongside the other two of the three great clans. Sadly, due to the more peaceful times, many Hyuga have forgotten about these tunnels, and fail to teach the newer generation about their existence within due to a stuck-up sense of arrogance that has emerged within the elders of the clan. It's a truly sad fate. Akino continued on her explanation, noting the imagination of how the tunnels were used on their faces. Her face took a more wistful look, because of many of them forgetting of the existence of the tunnels. We Byakuganless people often head down there to either escape those wanting to harm us for bringing them disgrace, and the like, as well as in order to try and steal whatever scraps of food we can. Thankfully there are Hyuga in our clan that help buy us food, even if some do it very reluctantly. Akino finished, noting the flinch that Naruto had at the end, having known the struggle of hunting food from a young age. Many of the group looked like they were wanting to cry, but Akino smiled through it. Now, I don't want to take too much of your time, so run along now. I am more than capable of taking care of myself, but thank you for keeping me company through this. Come back again and make that ramen again. Naruto and the others waved as she saw them off. Seeing Hinata returning, she sent a smile her way, to which Hinata returned a shy one of her own. Akino closed her door with a sigh, looking at an old photograph, wondering not for the first time if things would have been different if she had a Byakugan of her own that day. Backquote.